Chapter 81. The Mannerheim Line Welcomes You End. 2 months later. At a random farm on the border of Finland and Switzerland. Zhang Heng wiped away the sweat from his forehead and put down the axe in his hand. He moved all the chopped wood back to the storeroom and arranged them neatly among the piles. A loaf of fresh bread and some fish soup was on the table when Zhang Heng entered the house. The owner of this farm was a 67-year-old lady called Greta. Her husband and only son were tragically killed on the battlefield. She had a daughter as well, but had since been married off to a man in the United States. A month ago, she took in Zhang Heng and Simone out of kindness, besides needing help with the farm work as well. Hence, the two of them decided they would put up here for some time. When anyone asked about the two newcomers, Greta would tell them they were the relatives of her daughter's husband. Zhang Heng's fluent English was enough proof. As for Simone, she was a quiet girl and disliked socializing. As time passed, people around started to accept who she was. For good measure, both tossed away their weapons on their way here. Simone's gunshot wound was treated by a doctor who lived in a small town. The sad truth was, Simone had no family left in this world, with her great-grandfather passing away 2 years ago. In other words, there was nothing to hold her back and tie her down in this world. Once the battle at the lake was over, Zhang Heng initially wanted to settle down in America with Simone, only to realize later on that his plan was less than ideal. First, America was located too far away from Finland. Traveling all the way there would take a long time. Secondly, Simone's English wasn't the best. She would have a hard time communicating with the locals if she stayed there. In the end, Zhang Heng thought it best to stay at the border between Finland and Switzerland. Finland was one of the dukedoms of Switzerland, which was why most Finnish could also speak Swedish. As for the people who stayed in the villages near the border, it was common that they would converse in 2 languages, Greta being one of them. At least Simone could freely communicate with the people here. Through the window, Zhang Heng could see that Simone was returning from hunting. She had her sniper slung at her back and had a rabbit and a fox with her. As she entered the house, she placed today's catch in the kitchen, stored her hunting rifle in the attic, and washed her hands before settling in the dining room to have her meal. Grandma Greta scooped a bowlful of fish soup for everyone with Zhang Heng thanking her in Finnish. This was an ordinary night for them, peaceful and joyful. After dinner, they bid each other their good nights before retreating to their respective rooms. Greta was already up in the early hours of the morning, preparing Zhang Heng and Simone's breakfast. She then put it in a basket today. Simone wasn't wearing the hunting outfit that she'd put on each morning. Instead, she had put on a dress with a floral design. Since this was a dress that had been made initially for Greta's daughter, it seemed a little too small for Simone, looking slightly uncomfortable and squirmy. "Have fun today," said Greta while passing the food basket to them. "Bye, Greta," Zhang Heng replied as he gave Greta a hug. "Goodbye, children." Greta waved at them from afar. They sure looked very much like a couple going for an outing. Zhang Heng hopped on a bicycle, and Simone sat on the back. They soon passed the paddy field, and then a square in a small town, where their tiny hospital was plastered with blood donation posters. They enjoyed the serenity of the atmosphere as they passed all of it. The war in Finland had ended, but the war in Europe had only just begun. Switzerland was considered a neutral nation. Hence, they did not need to suffer the pains that came along with war, making it a paradise during the era of the Second World War. Shortly after that, Zhang Heng parked his bicycle on a grass field located on the outskirts of the hamlet. As they alighted the bike, they both carried the food basket down, seeing a field of flowers around them. Zhang Heng had no idea what species they were, but he heard that the national flower of Finland was called Lily of the Valley. Unfortunately, this was not the right time to watch them fully bloom. This was his last day of the quest. Earlier, Zhang Heng had told Simone that this day would arrive, to which she had said nothing. All she wanted was to spend time and have fun with him during his last day in Finland. After taking a pleasant walk along the streets of the town, they fished at a pond and even managed to play some poker. In the end, they settled on a small hill to enjoy the fish sandwiches prepared by Greta. Still, they spoke little to each other. Their silence did not mean they were awkward, but rather this was simply their way of spending time with each other. Simone's hair and dress fluttered in the wind. At last, she lay her head on Zhang Heng's lap and she closed her eyes. Zhang Heng then took a look at his watch, took off his jacket and covered Simone with it. Her eyebrows twitched while she was asleep. Seconds later, he heard a familiar voice. Time to return. Quest completed. You have completed. The Mannerheim line welcomes you quest. The game's third round has been completed. You will now be sent back to the real world. Zhang Heng opened his eyes, finding himself sitting on a chair. It was unreal. Amongst the 3 quests that he'd completed, this was the shortest. However, he was always on edge throughout the entire mission, having to face the possibility of being killed by enemies every single day. Thrown all the way from World War II back into the current world, Zhang Heng felt that he had just traveled through time. The one single thing that he could rely on was no longer there. This time, Zhang Heng sat dazed for half an hour before he finally stood up. Something fell out of his pocket, and when he saw it, he was shocked. It was a necklace with a pendant made of an animal bone, the necklace that Simone had worn all the while. The bone used here was smaller than the ones given by the old man in Chinese attire. This one was as tiny as a fingernail. What seemed to be a tall red pine with thick branches and a complicated root system was engraved on it. Zhang Heng hadn't the slightest of when Simone slipped it into his pocket. Since he could carry it back, that meant it was a game item. After spending 140 days, Zhang Heng thought that he would not acquire a game item in this round. To his surprise, the necklace had actually been with him for a long time. He did not look for the bartender lady to identify the item, knowing that it shouldn't carry any side effects as Simone had been wearing it for a long time. Right now, another item needed to be identified urgently. It was the Moresby bone. Zhang Heng had taken the old man's advice, trying his best to not let others know about their relationship. So, he had to wait until the quest ended before allowing the bartender to identify the item. I know that you possess a lucky rabbit foot, another game item, 3 rounds of quests and you acquired 3 game items. Are you the son of the lucky goddess? Asked the bartender while staring at him with gaping eyes. Chapter 82, PTSD. This time, the game ended in the early hours of the morning. Only a few people were still partying in the bar downstairs when Zhang Heng stepped out of the lounge. Instead of summarizing his experience right away as he did in the past, he returned to the university, showered, and went straight to bed. Right now, all he wanted was to clear his mind of any thoughts. He genuinely did not want to think about anything. In the middle of his slumber, the door suddenly creaked open, rousing him from his sleep. Zhang Heng instantly rolled off his bed and reached for a gun, but obviously there was nothing for him to grab. Wei Jiangyang, who had just walked into the room, was startled at his friend's reaction. He stood at the door, too stunned to react for a moment before muttering, Brother, are you all right?" Zhang Heng cringed at the slightly awkward situation. Even though his body was physically the same, that 2-month war experience had scarred him in a whole different way. Compared to before, he was a much lighter sleeper. Even the slightest of movements would wake him. This was his body's self-defense mechanism kicking into high gear in response to the complex and harsh environment he had been put into. Now and then, whenever he was walking down the street, he would subconsciously look around, keeping an eye out for bunkers. Zhang Heng knew very well about a mental condition called PTSD, which stood for post-traumatic stress disorder. It was common among veterans who had fought in wars. Mostly, symptoms varied from a complete reenaction of the battle experience, reclusiveness, and hypervigilance. Currently, Zhang Heng was more prone to the third symptom. Although able to recover from most of the war's trauma in his final month in Sweden, it was going to be really difficult for him to return to the mental state he was in prior to the war. Since he was already awake, Zhang Heng decided to not continue sleeping. He found himself something to eat in the cafeteria, then proceeded to the library with his laptop. After spending an entire afternoon completing the game's summary, Zhang Heng found himself thinking about the necklace in his pocket, so he looked up Finnish folklores on the internet. Finnish and Ugrian folklore were around even before the 10th century and were very similar to those of the Samoyedic people and the Altai tribe. As time passed, the neighboring tribes had slowly influenced their lore. Iranian myths, Turkic myths, and Baltic myths had, in their own way, been incorporated into Finnish folklore. Later on, influence of Islamic and Christian cultures was apparent as well. It was a very complicated subject, involving numerous deities. Considering these tales were not the most popular, only few records were left of them. Zhang Heng had no choice but to breach the Great Firewall of China to access Google for the information he wanted. He had been combing through the web until 10 p.m. that night when he finally found a picture of a necklace that looked identical to the one he had. Zhang Heng's drowsiness suddenly vanished. He clicked onto the webpage and found the deity in the picture, Tapio, the god of the forest. He was an ancient Finnish god, depicted as a fir tree. It was said that he could help in making hunts more fruitful for those who worshipped him. Religious reformist leader Mikhail Agricola had preserved precious genealogical materials in a list of gods which he had written in 1551. This included Tapio. Simone was born into a family of hunters and had grown up in the mountains with her grandfather. So it was no surprise that she too worshipped Tapio. Except for the wood carving he obtained from Tokyo Drift, which he still found no information about, the lucky rabbit's foot, Moresby, and the necklace from this round all had their connections to folklore. This was especially true for Moresby's appearance in the real world. Zhang Heng realized that things might not be as simple as they seemed. Unfortunately, the old man in the Tang suit had already left for Europe, and Zhang Heng had no one else he could ask about these things. Apparently, it was because of some old covenant that he could not reveal too much information to him. At least that was what the old man said before he left. Zhang Heng closed his laptop and remained seated for a while as he tried to piece the puzzle in his mind. However, not long after that, he heard the sounds of people giggling. 3 girls had occupied the table to his left. 2 hours ago, Zhang Heng noticed that one of them, a lanky girl with glasses, had been stealing glances at him. He thought that there was something on his face. Now, there were another 2 girls giggling too as they peeked at him in secrecy. When they saw that Zhang Heng was looking over to them, the 2 girls nudged the lanky girl. The latter got up from her seat and walked towards Zhang Heng, eyes on the ground. She stuttered, Friend, can I ask you a question?" Zhang Heng was a little surprised, but he knew why she had approached him. Even then, he still took the advanced mathematics workbook from her. Then, he very patiently wrote down a derivation process in great detail. After that, he looked at his mobile phone and told her, "I'm sorry. My girlfriend is looking for me." A flash of disappointment flickered in the girl's eyes. She forced a smile, fumbled a thank you before plodding back to her seat, crestfallen. Now that he had sown the seed, he had to see this lie he fabricated out of kindness to the end. Zhang Heng packed up his things and left. To his greatest surprise, however, it turned out that he really did receive a message on his phone. It was the bartender lady. Zhang Heng opened the PDF file she sent him as he walked towards the elevator with his bag. It turned out to be the long-overdue game point service form that he had asked her ages ago. He briefly scanned the document. In addition to an identification service, there was also a list of items for sale. These were not game items, but a collection of bizarre things. When compared to these items, the Chilwood box that contained them would easily be considered as ordinary. These peculiar objects included blood from a cow's first birth and the 45th feather of a crow, a bunch of things that made no sense. Amongst these were other normal items but seemed unusual because of their inclusion in the list. Zhang Heng texted the bartender lady just to be sure. "Penguin," she replied after a moment. "Why are you trying to hit on me?" Zhang Heng continued. "No, I'm not talking about QQ. I just saw that penguin is on the list of things for sale." Business must have been slow, because the bartender lady replied to him almost instantly. "Oh, why do you plan on buying one? They're relatively cheap. 1 game point for 2. You'll even get a freezer for free." "No need for that, thanks." Zhang Heng just wanted confirmation. There was no point in keeping two penguins in the dorm, having no knowledge whatsoever about the creatures. Besides, the school had refused to install air conditioners for the dorms even after everyone had repeatedly demanded for them. The dorms were like furnaces during the summer. Not everyone could take the stifling heat, let alone the poor penguins. He continued to scroll down the list before something caught his eye. What does extra game mean? It means precisely what it says it is, but you'll need to have 500 game points, and you can only choose from the previous game script. Its duration is also fixed at 60 days. Chapter 83, Wall. The extra game was actually very straightforward. Unlike Zhang Heng, not everyone would spend a year and a half in the game. Most would simply use that time to pick up new skills as their ranks were still not that high. So, the extra game was a good opportunity for them to continue improving their skills. But then again, 500 game points were simply too costly. Zhang Heng had gone through 3 rounds of games, yet he had only just broken through the 100-point ceiling. That meant that it would take him at least 10 rounds to gather that many. If there was no other way to acquire those game points, very few people would be able to afford this product. However, that wasn't even the most expensive thing on the list. Zhang Heng kept scrolling and spotted an item that cost 800 game points, a mission failure exemption card. As its name suggested, this little card allowed its holder to escape punishment if they failed a mission. Presently, Zhang Heng had successfully passed all 3 games. The first and third game's main mission was survival. If he failed, he would die. A mission failure exemption card would be useless in such a situation. But for games like Tokyo Drift, Zhang Heng had no clue as to what kind of punishment the players would receive if they did not complete the mission. If he had enough points, getting one of those cards sounded like a good idea. Zhang Heng also saw something called the No 137 Permanent Game Point Membership Card at the bottom of the page. This one was priced at an eye-watering 999 game points, an item that seemed particularly suspicious. According to the bartender lady, players with the membership card could enjoy a 20% discount when they spent their game points at checkpoints. Whether this was a good bargain or not was all up to the players themselves to determine. Zhang Heng did not see a single game item in this long list. Other than the extra game and mission failure exemption card, the items on the list were real tangible things that existed in the physical world. The penguins, for example, were hard to acquire for most people living on Earth. It required only 1 game point and even included free shipping, which was frankly a fantastic bargain. Of course, whether anyone would actually buy them in the first place was another question altogether. A week passed in a blink of an eye, and the end of the term was drawing near. The whole school was filled with students who only studied at the last minute. Hence, the library had recently become a hive of activity, brimming with students every day. The queue to the library had now extended to the entrance of the canteen, and this forced Zhang Heng to alter his routine. He would go to the gym and the archery range during the day, then wait it out until midnight. When the world had come to a halt, only would he make himself a cup of coffee and study in the empty library. Zhang Heng rarely skipped classes. Except for that time when he missed roll call for English class, he was mostly a diligent student, putting him out of danger of failing his subjects. However, since he had spent such a long time in the game, he had forgotten many things and it was necessary for him to review them. In the eyes of others, however, his behavior seemed a bit odd. Everyone was bustling around, trying to cram as much as possible in what little time they had to prepare for the term's final examination. Zhang Heng was the only one wandering around indifferently. Even his roommate, Chen Huadong, had managed to drag himself out of bed early every morning to study. With his head buried in books, Chen Huadong could not help but roll his eyes whenever Zhang Heng left the room with his bow. Worse still, Zhang Heng would always return very late in the night, almost always just before lights out. Chen Huadong wondered how his friend would be able to find any time to prepare for the exam. Zhang Heng felt great today, successfully hitting a moving target 50 meters away. All 10 arrows hit the bulls. He ignored the coach's resentful looks and took a drink of water. Since he had just completed the third game, there was still plenty of time before the fourth and did not pack his schedule with all the training. After his practice, he headed to the park to feed the pigeons there instead of going to the gym. When night fell, he spectated a game of football in the stadium. It was 10 by the time the match ended. Rather than taking the train, Zhang Heng opted to jog back to school. As he jogged, he passed by an alley and quickly noticed two drifters searching for food in a dumpster. They appeared to be a bedraggled grandparent and her grandchild, both wearing tattered and soiled clothing. The older one fished out a piece of half-eaten fried chicken and 2 packets of takeaways. She called her grandson to her, and they crouched by the wall to eat. When she looked up, she saw Zhang Heng suddenly racing toward them. The pair had probably been bullied by other homeless for the moment they saw Zhang Heng coming towards them. They looked extremely terrified. The old lady dropped the plastic bag in her hand and reached to pull her grandchild closer. Suddenly, something fell on her shoulder. From his angle, Zhang Heng was able to see everything. The brick wall behind the old lady melted like hot cheese, and some sort of black liquid crawled onto her shoulder. When her grandson, about 7 years old, saw this happening, he froze in his tracks. Zhang Heng ran quickly towards the elderly lady and grabbed her hand, but the black liquid was a hell lot stronger than he thought. That thing seemed to be able to shift between a liquid and solid form. Zhang Heng's pulling did nothing to free the old lady of its shackles. Although he was conservative on strength, it would have been useless even if he used all of it. If he exerted too much force, the old lady's body might be unable to take it. As Zhang Heng was racking his brain for a solution, the black liquid had already engulfed half of the elderly woman's body. Then, as if having a mind of its own, it crawled onto the old lady's arm towards Zhang Heng, as if not satisfied with the prey that it already had. Zhang Heng reacted quickly, withdrawing his hand at the very last second. Then he grabbed the motionless child. The sudden movement shook him from his daze, and in panic, he started struggling. He wanted to save his grandmother, but the black liquid moved so quickly that, in less than a minute, it had completely engulfed the woman. It then slowly pulled her into the back. Half a minute later, Zhang Heng and the little vagrant were the only ones left in the alley. A sharp pain shot up Zhang Heng's right arm. The kid had bitten him and struggled himself free. He rushed to the wall and fell, knees to the ground. No matter how hard he thumped and punched the wall, the bricks remained unchanged, as if everything that had just happened was a bad dream. Chapter 84, An Encounter. Name: Zhang Heng. Qualification: currently studying at a university. Place of birth and ID, please. A person had just disappeared right in front of Zhang Heng. He had to report it to the police no matter what. Soon, police officers arrived at the crime scene. However, it was too late. As there was no one else witnessed the incident except Zhang Heng and no CCTV cameras around them as well, they had to check the pharmacy's CCTV that was located beside the alley. Still, the footage explained nothing about what just happened. The police had to escort the two of them to the station first. Upon reaching, Zhang Heng was seated down before someone summoned him to take his statement. Before him, the police officers were dealing with a domestic problem involving a married couple that was having a heated argument. Once Zhang Heng faced the police officer, she started to ask him about his personal information. When the questions headed in the direction of how the person disappeared, Zhang Heng decided that he would give honest answers. It was quite dark over there, and I didn't manage to see the whole thing clearly. I think she was devoured by the wall. What, is that a metaphor? Did the wall collapse and buried her alive? No, literally. I mean she was literally devoured by the wall. Being a university student, you should know that it's illegal to lie to the police, right? Do you want me to contact your university's chancellor? The female police officer angrily shouted while slamming her pen on the table. Zhang Heng was speechless, though he did not blame the police officer for getting pissed. She might have just pulled an all-nighter at the station. Obviously, no one spending a night at the station would be too joyous after listening to Zhang Heng's ludicrous statement. However, being a matter of life and death, Zhang Heng had no reason to make up a story and mislead the police officer. Maybe I saw it wrongly as it was a really dark place. From my angle, all I saw was the woman disappearing into the wall. The officer frowned once again, albeit this time, she managed to control her anger a little better. When she stared at Zhang Heng, she noticed that he did not flinch, with him gazing at her calmly. Judging from the way he behaved, she concluded that he wasn't fooling around. Zhang Heng had also mentioned that the place was too dark, and he failed to see anything clearly. So she decided that she would not dwell on this question. Instead, she turned to asking questions about the relationship between him and the woman that disappeared. The police officer took a total of 20 minutes to record Zhang Heng's statement. Throughout the entire process, he was very cooperative. After the small commotion, the female police officer turned out to be very polite as well. So, there is no sign of infringement. You didn't exactly provide us with reliable evidence, and that kid refuses to talk as well. I can't form a basis for a case from what you told me. Anyway, I would like to offer my thanks for reporting a homeless kid to us. We will try to identify him as soon as possible and contact his parents to come and pick him up. For now, Zhang Heng had done everything he could do. This ended precisely as he'd expected. He was sad, but that matter was out of his control, knowing that it was impossible to save the woman. There were many people like her in a busy city. Usually, the busy pedestrians that walked the streets would simply pass them by. Whatever that slimy thing was, Zhang Heng knew that it was extremely cunning. It knew that such a target would not draw any attention even if it were brazen enough to devour her on the street. If Zhang Heng did not pass by the alley, no one would have noticed the disappearance of two homeless people in this city. Zhang Heng stood up and shook hands with the police officer. He then stole a glance at the kid that sat on the bench. He was still holding the fried chicken that he picked up from the bin and seemed to be in great shock. Taking pity on the child, Zhang Heng took out 300 yuan from his wallet and handed it to the police officer. "Can you buy some food for him? He hasn't had dinner." "You are actually quite nice. All right, don't worry about it. Now that he is at our station, we will buy him some food later." Zhang Heng was still rather upset after leaving the police station. The creature that he encountered this evening was definitely supernatural, and he had no idea who would do something like this. It could have been a monster like Moresby or even other players who possessed game items like him. Whatever the answer was, this was definitely not a good thing. According to the old man, things like that had existed in this world for hundreds of thousands of years, peacefully coexisting alongside the humans. Clearly, the mysterious game had destroyed the balance. Suddenly, Zhang Heng realized that Moresby would appear at Hangzhou International Airport. The old man told Zhang Heng that it had chosen the two Chinese tourists randomly. Zhang Heng, however, did not agree. There must be a better reason why it had appeared on this foreign soil. The most troublesome part was the existence of other players. If they survived the game, they must have acquired game items as well. Zhang Heng could not figure out the system that the game's creator used to select players. Not everyone had the intention to lay low like him. When someone came into possession of such great power, they would start to think of how to utilize their newfound abilities fully. Death in the game was the one factor that pushed everyone to take extreme measures. However, Zhang Heng had no intention to become a hero, nor did he want others to make a mess of where he lived. It was almost 12 when Zhang Heng arrived back at the university. He did not go through the main entrance, choosing instead to enter from the side door located west. This door was further away from the MRT station, and few elected to use this entrance. At times, some teachers would still use it because it was nearer to their residence. As Zhang Heng came up upon the entrance, he saw a shiny black Mercedes-Benz parked on his right-hand side. Shen Zixi quickly shuffled off the car. An awkward situation emerged between them when she laid her eyes on Zhang Heng. Suddenly, Zhang Heng remembered a rumor that he had heard earlier. Unfortunately, the black Mercedes had already left, and he was unable to take a good look at the driver. Shen Zixi quickly put the black pouch into her bag as she attempted to make herself look as calm as possible. "It seems like we always meet at the wrong time," lamented Shen Zixi with a bitter smile. "You don't have to explain anything to me. Zhang Heng replied. Both of them were nothing more than friends. No matter what Shen Zixi did, she had no obligation to tell him about it. Besides, Zhang Heng did not believe in the rumors he heard. He knew she was smart enough to stop the Mercedes away from the front entrance, lest the things said about her would become truth. The only question he had was why Shen Zixi did not defend herself when the allegations were thrown at her. "We'll talk soon. My dorm will be locked in a bit. I have to hurry," said Shen Zixi after glancing at the time. The female dorm was further away from the western entrance, and the dormitories would be locked in 5 minutes. Both of them waved each other a swift farewell before retreating to their respective rooms. Chapter 85, Christmas Eve. It had been 2 days since Zhang Heng reported the supernatural case to the police. After that, he did not come across any cases involving the unknown. Earlier, he was surprised when he received a message from Heike Asuka. She wanted to invite him to an amusement park on Christmas Eve, where a few of her friends would tag along as well. This was not the first time she asked Zhang Heng out. She was the kind of that could not stay indoors for too long, heading out whenever the opportunity presented itself. The one thing that surprised Zhang Heng the most was her academic results. Although she always hung out, she still managed to pass her exams with flying colors, never having failed any subjects before. He even saw her fooling around on the eve of the finals. The way she behaved was actually very similar to someone Zhang Heng knew, someone he had previously rejected a few times. He had never expected Heike Asuka to be the persistent kind of girl. This time, he felt terrible that he had always dismissed her invitations, and so went ahead and asked his friends to join him if they had nothing better to do. Ma Wei was passionate about doing well in his studies. As for Wei Jiangyang and Chen Huadong, they had been attempting to memorize everything that they studied so far. Both of them were dying for some entertainment outside the confines of the dorm room. "Are you talking about the Japanese girl that you saved at Food Street? The thing is, we don't speak Japanese." She'll be there with a few of her friends. It seems they are from China, Japan, and one of them is actually from Ukraine," replied Zhang Heng while reading Heike Asuka's text. "Never mind, I don't think I will join you." Though Wei Jiangyang was interested in being friends with girls from different countries, he still thought that his life was his priority. He was not bold enough to abandon his girlfriend and instead have fun with others. As for Chen Huadong, he was devastated that his latest attempt in wooing Su Jiang had once again failed miserably. It would be a nice change for him to go out and distract himself from all the sorrow. Hence, he volunteered to go with Zhang Heng. Lastly, Ma Wei the genius was done with studying. He, too, decided to tag along with Zhang Heng. After that, Zhang Heng told Heike Asuka that he would bring a couple of friends with him. It was all in good faith, and she was totally fine with it. Both sides had agreed that they would meet at the entrance of the amusement park. Seeing that there was still some time left before they headed there, Zhang Heng played a few rounds of basketball with Chen Huadong on his computer. After the game, they proceeded to the cafeteria for some food before departing. As the three of them had arrived 10 minutes early, they purchased the entrance tickets first. When they came out, they spotted Heike Asuka and her group of friends walking towards them. On her head was a beanie with 2 fur balls hanging from it. They swung around as she ran towards them. She quickly waved her hands at Zhang Heng the moment she saw him. 2 boys and 5 girls were here with her. The handsome blonde bloke should be the exchange student from Ukraine. He might have looked all imposing and cool from the outside, but once they had gotten to know him, he turned out to be actually somewhat timid. All of them did a simple introduction about themselves. Heike Asuka even spelled out her name in Chinese. They got to know how good the exchange students. Mandarin was the moment they started the introductions. Amongst them, the guy from Ukraine had the highest proficiency in Mandarin, his great-grandmother being from China. So, he named himself Zhang Wei. As for the rest of the Japanese girls, only one of them could speak good Mandarin. That being said, they could all communicate with each other without problems. The only thing was that they had to say the words slowly, considering it wasn't their native language. The last Japanese girl had already started using some of the more complex Chinese phrases. Amongst them, Heike Asuka had the lowest proficiency in Mandarin. Right after she introduced herself, she instantly reverted to Japanese again when she talked with the two girls. Apart from those two, the other two who could understand her were Zhang Heng and another boy that was currently taking Japanese classes. Seeing that everyone was here, Zhang Heng distributed the entrance tickets to each of them. The amusement park was packed with crowds of thousands because it was Christmas Eve, with most of the visitors being couples. There were even a few Santa Clauses standing at the entrance to give presents to those that were about to enter the amusement park, giving out gifts to the entering visitors. The group got their presents too, and when they opened theirs, they found out that they had all received different items. Zhang Heng got a nail clipper, and Ma Wei found a keychain. However, Chen Huadong was the luckiest amongst them, receiving a complimentary pass from the amusement park's management. The moment Hei Sasuke opened her present, her face immediately turned red. She quickly hid it in her bag before anyone saw it. One of the guys persuaded her to show everyone what she got, though Zhang Heng could roughly guess the item that she received. Immediately, he looked for a topic to distract everyone. At his quick thinking, Hei Sasuke looked at Zhang Heng gratefully. To be honest, the amusement park wasn't as entertaining during the night. For safety reasons, rides like roller coasters and other thrills were shut down. Fortunately, the park made up for it with spectacular live performances. Zhang Heng and his friends queued up to try some of the games offered at the booths nearby. Seeing that the live show was about to start, some of the girls suggested that they should watch it first. "You guys go ahead. I will keep her company," said Zhang Heng, when he saw that Hei Sasuke was more interested in the game she was playing. "I will keep her company as well," said the other guy that spoke Japanese. Zhang Heng did not brush him off, noticing that was trying to woo Hei Sasuke. In the direction of giving them more alone time, Zhang Heng volunteered to help hold on to their personal belongings. Hei Sasuke was so excited that she did not suspect anything was amiss. Secretly, though, the guy was extremely grateful for what Zhang Heng did. While Hayes and the guy visited the haunted house, Zhang Heng settled on a bench to answer a call. The call came from Ireland and was his parents. They both wished him a happy Christmas. At the same time, they kept teasing him and asking him to take a picture of the girl that was close to him. Zhang Heng then took a picture of the couple on his left. "That's pathetic." Now his parents were nagging him, lamenting about their life in university. Judging from the background noise, Zhang Heng deduced that his parents were probably standing in front of a theater or stadium of some sort. As they were running out of time because the event they were about to attend was about to start, they had to come back to a more serious topic. They informed Zhang Heng that they would return to celebrate the new year with him. They even prepared a surprise for him as well. Zhang Heng did not entirely trust everything they said. It had been 2 years that his parents had not celebrated the new year with him. Last year, they were both on holiday but had chosen to travel to Africa instead of celebrating Chinese New Year with their son. Initially, Zhang Heng wanted to ask them about Moresby, Tapio, and the crows that appeared in his mind when he used the wooden sculpture. Though they most probably wouldn't qualify as parents of the year, they were still experts in all these mystical stuff. Considering they were coming back in about a month, Zhang Heng decided that he would only ask when they came home. Talking about matters like these on the phone might just turn out to be more confusing. After hanging up the call, Zhang Heng sat on the bench for a little longer. Suddenly, he saw someone familiar in the crowd. He frowned when he looked again. The person had disappeared. Chapter 86, Arcade Center. Zhang Heng didn't know if he had been mistaken. Just when he stood up from the bench and wanted to investigate, Hei Sasuke and the guy had come out from the haunted house. "I was so scared. A face appeared out of nowhere when I was walking around just now. The creature even stuck out its tongue to scare me. My only thought after that was to get out of this haunted house as fast as possible. I should have just listened to you about not getting in. You are the smartest one here." Zhang Heng then glanced at the guy beside her. He simply shrugged, looking somewhat disappointed. Visiting the haunted house was actually a good idea for a guy where usually a girl would typically stay closer to him when she got scared. Hei Sasuke, however, was no ordinary girl, running as fast as her legs could take her when she was spooked. In the end, the guy had to go after her, and there was nothing very romantic about it. Zhang Heng gave up the idea of going after the mysterious person after the two of them interrupted him. The good thing was, he did not dwell on it. There were a lot of people that looked similar to each other in this world. After getting only a quick glance, the person he saw could have been anyone. "What are we going to play next?" asked Zhang Heng. "Do I get to pick?" asked Hei Sasuke while pointing at the big teddy bear not far away from her. "Can I have that teddy bear?" Offering various types of games, these were a bunch of arcade booths managed by the amusement park itself. Soon, the three approached one of the staff in a Santa suit. The employee told them that the teddy bear was the prize for the mini-games. "Let me give it a try then," said the guy. Since he was interested in Hei Sasuke, he aspired to prove himself in front of her. He then turned around and took a look at his options. In the end, he landed his attention on a shooting game. It was common for most guys to play FPS games. Shooting was a subject that they were definitely familiar with. After observing others play and reading the rules, he decided to give it a go. The guy tossed a token into the machine and picked up the laser gun. He then took a deep breath before pushing the start button. The game itself was pretty simple, where all he needed to do was to hit as many balloons on the screen as possible. Different colors carried different scores. The player was given 2 minutes to collect as many points as possible. In the beginning, it was relatively simple, where the guy landed all his shots on the balloons that carried the most points. He even had the time to shoot the red and yellow balloons that carried lesser points. Soon, his score accumulated really fast. At the rate he was going, he would be able to claim the teddy bear in less than 2 minutes. As time passed, the balloons fell faster and faster, and black balloons started to pop up as well. The scores would be deducted if the player shot black balloons. The game was getting harder by the second. When the time was almost over, he started to panic and inadvertently hit another black balloon right before the time ended. In the end, his only reward was a sticker saying "Merry Christmas." This pathetic result had deeply embarrassed him, so he decided to go for another round. Perhaps it was due to his nervousness or his desperation for better results, he fared worse in this second round. This time, he accidentally hit a total of 4 black balloons. The people behind him were literally laughing at him. Judging by their buff physique and attire, they were most likely students from a university nearby here. Though the guy was very unhappy that they were laughing at him, there was nothing he could do about it. A fight almost broke out when one of them called him a weak-ass. Though the person simply muttered it out, it was clear enough for the people around him to hear everything. In the end, they laughed at him even harder. Hei Sasuke could not understand the conversation, but she could sense that something was not right. So she quickly told the guy that she did not want the teddy bear anymore. It was better for them to look for fun elsewhere. Zhang Heng was fine with that. When the guy saw that the group of boys who laughed at him were strong and muscular, and that there were only 3 of them, he knew that things could take a worse turn for them if he decided to confront them. None the wiser, he decided to swallow all the frustration that was burning within him. The 3 of them ignored the rowdy gang and proceeded to the dart-throwing booth next door. On the other hand, the group of guys that laughed at him tried the shooting game. Hei Sasuke was overloaded with luck tonight. Although she had never undergone professional training, she still managed to hit the bullseye thrice. Though her last dart missed the target, she still managed to get the 4th prize. The attendee then handed her a mug, which instantly lightened up her mood. Her admirer standing beside her was clearly distracted. He still had his attention focused on the group of guys that laughed at him earlier. After playing 2 rounds, they only managed to win a consolation prize. "I thought you guys are supposed to be really good." The guy jeered at the group sarcastically. One of the boys that looked like a basketball player overheard what he said. He turned around and looked at him with a smile. "Hey, it's you guys again. Why are you still here? Come play 1 round with me then." He did not expect his soft whisper to be heard by them. Nevertheless, they was forced to accept the challenge knowing that this was the worst time for him to act like a coward. "What do you want to play?" "Let's all play a round of the shooting game then, since we all look down on each other. I'm not going to make your life difficult, don't worry. All you need to do is call yourself a weak-ass if you lose." The guy was furious when he heard the degrading slur again. As he looked at their score, he felt that he should be able to beat his opponent if he played carefully this time. Fine, let's do it then. The group guys were clearly excited when he accepted their challenge. All of them started to look at him as if he was a clown that was ready to perform in front of them. "Wang Bin, you are so mean. Why are you bullying a retard?" asked one of the group members while blowing a whistle. "I have to do it. He is calling us weak. He wants to teach us a lesson and brag in front of his girlfriend," said Wang Bin with both hands wide open. "You first or us first?" asked the guy who spoke Japanese. Suddenly, he felt that something was not right. Their shooting was not as good, but they acted really confident in front of him. Was that simply mind games? Although he knew in his heart that it probably was, he still couldn't muster up enough courage to face them confidently. He even started to regret accepting the challenge. Truth be told, Heike Sasuke did not actually understand the word weakass, and he was the one who was feeling embarrassed. In one way or another, Wang Bin was right about him. Without a doubt, he did have the intention to show off in front of Heike Sasuke. Chapter 87, Can I Borrow 2 Tokens? Going first had its good and bad sides. If he performed well, he could exert tremendous pressure on his opponent, putting him under a lot of stress. At the same time, that would also mean his trump card would be revealed. The guy speaking fluent Japanese hesitated for a while before choosing to go after his opponent, suspecting that his nemesis was playing tricks on him. After they made their choices, everyone from the opposing team had their eyes on a plump guy standing amongst them. When compared to others of the same age, he looked like an ordinary, unassuming guy that no one would notice. The outdated boss-sitting-down jacket that he wore would surely pass unperceived. Earlier, when his friends were playing the shooting game, he just stood there silently without saying a word. "Why did you guys bring me trouble again?" he asked, then smiled when he realized that everyone was looking at him. "We are all just hanging out since it's Christmas Eve. I will buy everyone supper when this is over," Wang Bin proclaimed while handing the laser gun to the plump guy. "This will be the last time I'll be doing something like this. Teacher Guo advised us to stay out of trouble while we are here." The moment he picked up the gun, his temperament switched entirely, as if transforming into another person. One could instantly tell that he was no amateur from the way he held the laser gun. Immediately, the guy fluent in Japanese could feel that something was not right. Still, he was left with a tiny bit of hope that he could beat the plump guy. The moment the game started, the plump guy's performance completely annihilated whatever little hope he had. He might have looked ordinary, but his shooting skills were definitely something out of this world. At the early stages of the game, his superb skills weren't apparent as the game was still easy. When the balloons started appearing faster and faster on the screen, he could still land his shots on the balloons that carried the most points. His scores were rising steadily. Left in shock, the guy who spoke fluent Japanese realized that his opponent had surpassed his best score, and he still had half a minute left to complete the game. Right until the end, the balloons appearing on the screen became so fast that it almost faded into a blur. It was at that moment that the plump guy started to miss. It was no longer relevant, however, as his score was high enough for the top prize. Upon seeing the win, the attendant of the arcade carried the giant teddy bear and approached him. "I don't need this giant teddy bear," said the plump guy while putting down the laser gun. "What now? Do you still want to compete with us?" asked Wang Bin while tapping on the shoulder of the guy who spoke fluent Japanese. At that very moment, he realized that he had walked into a trap. The plump guy was no ordinary man. There was a reason why he was in the same school as Wang Bin. His forte was clearly not physical sports. From the way he performed just now, everyone realized that he must be a professional esports competitor. "You should honor the bet you made since you've lost the game." Wang Bin then took out his cell phone from his pocket and turned on the camera, switching it to record. The guy speaking fluent Japanese was deeply embarrassed in front of everyone. He knew that Wang Bin had intended all the while to make him look like a fool in public. What he did not expect was his opponent recording anything on video. His reputation would be eternally tainted if the clip were uploaded to the internet. The worst thing here was that his impulsive decision had also dragged Hayes Asuka and Zhang Heng in with him. Despite all that, however, he did not hear Wang Bin saying anything about the loser having to do whatever he was asked to do. He was so distracted that he did not realize the two persons beside him were gone. The plump guy harumphed and saw that a crowd had started to gather around the arcade machine. He pinned the Eastern Tree leaf drink he was holding under his armpit and picked up the laser gun. "Can I borrow 2 tokens from you?" Suddenly Zhang Heng voiced out, asking Wang Bin for the coins. "Not about to give up, huh? Fine." Wang Bin then took 2 tokens from his pocket and tossed it to Zhang Heng, who inserted one of them into the machine and placed the other under the screen. "This token is for you to challenge my score later," Zhang Heng told the plump guy. Immediately, the crowd fell into a hushed silence. Even the guy fluent in Japanese thought that Zhang Heng had gone insane. Everyone saw that the plump guy dominated the shooting game. According to the arcade's employee, the giant teddy bear had been sitting there for 2 months, with nobody managing to claim it as their own. This was the first time that someone had won it fair and square. The plump guy was surprised that Zhang Heng wanted to challenge him. The crowd had started booing, but Zhang Heng chose to ignore them, starting the game instead. Somehow, he held the gun in a rather amateurish way. There was nothing particularly skillful about that. Then the tables started turning. The moment he started firing a few shots, the plump guy quickly suspected that Zhang Heng might actually be better than him. Outsiders were just there to watch them compete, but a real pro like the plump guy could instantly tell that Zhang Heng was a truly skilled marksman. In the game's early stages, most players gained points at a predictable rate. Although the balloons had gradually appeared faster and faster on the screen, the plump guy observed that Zhang Heng still maintained his calm, and his performance had remained steady. Zhang Heng played the game differently from the plump guy. Zhang Heng's score increased bits by bits. After all the in-game battle-hardened training he got, his observational skills had grown better than most. Unlike the others, he did not impulsively focus only on the highest-scoring balloons while missing out on the rest. After observing for a while, the plump guy noticed that Zhang Heng would arrange the balloons on the screen based on their value in the shortest time possible. He would not necessarily always shoot the ones with the highest value. Instead, he made sure to take out the rest of the valuable balloons before they left the screen as well. That meant Zhang Heng had to continually change his shooting sequence. The plump guy had no idea how Zhang Heng managed such an incredible, striking great fear in him. 2 minutes soon passed. When Zhang Heng finally put down the laser gun, he realized that half of the crowd from the arcade center was watching him. Finally, his points on the screen stopped increasing. His final score was 2,765, 636 points higher than the plump guy's. Hayes Asuka was filled with excitement when she compared the scores. This time, the group that bullied them was left speechless. Wang Bin quickly turned around and looked at the plump guy, hoping that he would start another challenge. The plump guy, however, could only gaze at the coin on the machine with a bitter smile. "I don't think I can surpass his final score." Wang Bin and the rest of them became deeply embarrassed. Never in their minds did they imagine that he would lose to Zhang Heng. They were at a loss, not knowing what they should do now. Chapter 88, Auction. The employee was left in a dilemma. Although it was true that Zhang Heng surpassed the score required for the first prize, no one would have expected that 2 players would be good enough to claim first prize. It was definitely a rare situation. The arcade's management, too, had no idea what to do next. As the victors were already present, going to get a second giant teddy bear now was out of the question. In an attempt to ease the predicament, the employee suggested that they could choose other prizes in exchange for the bear. Zhang Heng turned around to look at the group that bullied them earlier. It seemed this Wang Bin guy was the leader of the group. He appeared somewhat happy with the outcome and chose to stick to the bet. "We have lost, and we will call ourselves weakasses." Zhang Heng was taken aback hearing that they would stick to their promise. Since they came in bigger numbers, they could actually leave the place without honoring the deal. It would be embarrassing if they did so, but still, It was better than calling themselves weakasses. As for Asuka's admirer, Zhang Heng was truly disappointed in him. Although having knowledge that he lost the bet and had even dragged both of his friends into his trouble, he didn't even have the courtesy to tell his opponent that he would bear all responsibility. You don't have to call yourself that in public. I know you guys don't really want the giant teddy bear. Why not just give it to us? Then we can put this matter to rest, Zhang Heng offered. Wang Bin was taken aback by the methods Zhang Heng had used to deal with this matter. A few seconds ago, he saw the guy who spoke fluent Japanese taking out his cell phone and was prepared to put them on the record. They thought that they would surely be humiliated to death by the three of them. Now, they were pleasantly surprised when they heard Zhang Heng's suggestion to call this off peacefully. Everyone initially thought that he was extremely arrogant when he left the coin under the screen if the plump guy asked for a rematch. His prior actions contrasted greatly with the merciful decision that he just made. Zhang Heng and Wang Bin were no enemies, having simply undergone a small conflict. Earlier, Wang Bin was bullying the guy that spoke fluent Japanese because he knew that he had the plump guy behind him, which was why Zhang Heng used the same method to let him taste his own medicine. The token just sat there under the screen, but none of them dared to touch it. This tiny gesture trumped over whatever word that would come out from one's mouth. Since they had learned their lesson, Zhang Heng had no intention to humiliate them in front of everyone. Immediately, the plump guy handed the giant teddy bear to Asuka. "This is great. True men like us should not play with teddy bears anyway. It's a good thing you guys want it from us." The other members of the group laughed and smiled, seeking to make the whole affair a little less awkward. Before this incident, they had always go around and mess with other people solely in the name of proving that they would be the winner. This was their first time tasting the bitterness of what it was like to lose. Seeing that Zhang Heng was willing to let them off the hook, they were all relieved. Having no intention of lingering around any longer, they left the arcade the moment everything was settled. Wang Bin was the last to leave. Zhang Heng frowned when he saw him walking towards them. He believed that he was a sore loser and wanted to come back for revenge. "I owe you a favor this time. Save my number on your cell phone. You can call me anytime you need my help. Let me be frank. We are not going to get ourselves in any sort of fights. Our school is really strict about these things." Zhang Heng was astonished that Wang Bin did not throw a tantrum in front of them. In return, he nodded and took down his number. Asuka hugged the teddy bear tightly as they walked away. She felt as if she was living in a dream. "Whoa, I didn't know you're such a good shooter. Were you a secret agent or something?" Asuka was so happy that she jumped around and pretended to shoot with her finger. Zhang Heng could only think of the first excuse that came to his mind. "I play a lot of shooting games," he said. Since Asuka had never played an FPS game before, she did not suspect anything wrong with Zhang Heng's statement. All she knew was that he was really good at video games. On the other hand, the guy who spoke fluent Japanese was now embarrassed by what he did earlier. He knew that he would never be able to get Asuka to like him. Besides, Zhang Heng had overshot him by miles after successfully handling the matter. In the end, he made up an excuse for himself before hurriedly retreating to his dorm. Zhang Heng wanted to convince him to stay, but he was determined to leave. That meant only two of them were left. After that, they both decided to try out the bumper cars while waiting for the live performance to be over. Soon, they met up with the rest of them at the Ferris wheel. It was late and the exam was at hand, so they eventually decided it was time to head back to the hostel. Of course, if someone could win an award for the most fruitful trip, it had to be Asuka. She hugged the giant teddy bear with one hand, and her other held the mug, becoming the envy of many girls. While chatting with the other two Japanese girls on the MRT, she told them she had single-handedly won those two items by herself. Of course, Zhang Heng had no intention to expose her. To be honest, if Wang Bin and his group of friends did not bully them in the first place, Zhang Heng would have never showcased his marksmanship. If Chen Huadong and Ma Wei were there with him, they would never believe that he improved his shooting skills all by playing FPS games. A month ago, Zhang Heng played CS, GO with Chen Huadong and Jiang Weiyang. Zhang Heng's shooting skills only slightly bettered Chen Huadong. He would never accept Zhang Heng's reason. All the skills he possessed right now were better than most of his counterparts. Considering that he was still really young, few people got to experience what he went through in the game. As his skills would only improve the longer he spent playing the game, it would surely be harder for him to explain the things that he could do when the time came. Simply put, Hayes Asuka had actually saved him a lot of trouble by claiming all the credit. It was Christmas today and the last day to join the auction as well. 2 days ago, Zhang Heng received an invitation from the gaming committee. He had been invited to join an auction for game items. Zhang Heng took a look at the auction's date and time written at the bottom left of the invitation and saw that it was to be held tomorrow night. He was always curious about how other players looked like, so naturally, he would not miss this opportunity. Of course, the main attraction was obtaining items that could assist him in-game. Shadow Moment had played a significant role in Zhang Heng completing the 3rd round of the game. Without it, Simon would have definitely killed him in the game's early stage. Though he could not see it, the lucky rabbit's foot helped him a lot as well. The chance of discovering these miraculous items were the reason why Zhang Heng looked forward to the auction. Chapter 89, Fu Lu and Professor. Verifying Player. Verified. Player 7958 has the invitation card. Connecting player to the quest. Quest connected successfully. Current quest is auction special. Current quest has no story background and is not considered a round of the game. Quest goal none. Mode multiplayer. Time flow rate 2. 1 hour in the real world is equivalent to 4 hours in the game. Players would be sent back to the real world after an hour. Friendly reminder, the game will begin in 5 seconds. Players, please get ready. When Zhang Heng opened his eyes, he found himself standing on the deck of a cruise ship. He was wearing a black tuxedo perfectly tailored to his body, and there was a tag hanging in front of his chest. His player ID and place of registration were printed on it. Zhang Heng then glanced at his watch and realized that it was 10 at night. That would mean the auction would end at 11. This time, he did not need to worry about the bug created by the extra time he had. This round of the game was different from all the other quests that Zhang Heng completed. It was safe to say that he would not encounter any danger in this one, finally being able to relax. After checking out his surroundings, he discovered that this place was similar to checkpoints that he had to go through before entering any game. He could see other players around him, but their faces had been blurred out. One could not deny that the game's developers did an excellent job of protecting everyone's privacy. However, that did not mean that the players were always at peace with each other. Is this your first time attending an auction? Suddenly, Zhang Heng heard a voice from behind. Turning around, he saw a rather short man who immediately handed him his business card. His name was Ding Si, but Zhang Heng knew that it was fake. The world is not as safe as we thought it is. Some lunatics don't know how to stick to the rules. We all have to be careful, blurted the short man while shrugging. What is that supposed to mean? You should be a new player, right? Before this, every player knew how to treat others with respect. Everyone was willing to help each other out whenever the going got tough. Unfortunately, some of the psychotic players came across the identities of others. They then hunted them down in cold blood. Most players are now in fear after the incident. That's why everyone cares so much about their privacy nowadays. According to what I know, the number of people attending this auction is way lesser than last year. Hunted. Zhang Heng looked at the card again and saw the words, North China Fu Lu Chamber of Commerce, along with the person's contact number. Yes, a large number of players are being hunted down. One of them found out that killing other players would allow them to rob them of their game items and game points. After that, this whole killing business went out of hand, turning into a full-blown catastrophe to all other players. Are the developers going to do something about it? As long as the players don't reveal any information about the game to other players, they would not stick their noses in the business of other players. It seems like they have something more important to deal with. Ding Si had no intention to complete his sentence. Clearly, he did not want to dwell on it. You attended this auction to purchase some game items for yourself, right? Let me know if you don't have enough game points, eh? Perhaps you can consider accepting our assistance. What do you mean? Your Chamber of Commerce is selling game points. You sure are a newbie, just as I expected. Not only the Fulu, many other chambers of commerce provide similar services as well. You can always purchase game points from us, though I wouldn't recommend it. The exchange rate is really high right now. You will need 4.2 million yuan to exchange for one game point. Usually, you would only need 3.7 million. The best thing for you to do right now is to pawn your game items to us. Once we have appraised it, we will instantly transfer the game points to you. Thank you so much. I will think about it. Ding Si was a professional salesperson. He knew the secrets of successfully closing a deal, patiently holding back and not pushing Zhang Heng into taking it. The auction only begins in an hour and a half. You can go explore, walk around the place a little. There are some interesting spots on this cruise. The first deck has a casino, cinema, and a game room. The second deck houses a theater for live performances and a place for you to relax. The third deck is a public space for people to socialize. I'd advise you to check out the first deck before you proceed, if you want to. Zhang Heng thanked Ding Si. This was his first time entering a social circle that was filled with players. In order to prevent more killings, Ding Si had told Zhang Heng that most of the players' real identities were strictly protected. This was the only time Zhang Heng could see so many players all at once in the same place. Other than bidding for game items, they would also seize the opportunity to enjoy the pleasantly entertaining facilities offered here. A good example was the Fulu Chamber of Commerce, where they provided the players with different services. Among these included bartering items for game points and providing loans. Otherwise, they would also help with the sale of game items and customize certain items according to the player's wishes. Custom-made items were usually cheaper than the regular by 20% to 30%. It was apparent that they were taking advantage of the auction to promote their services. Amongst the three, Zhang Heng was most interested in the third deck. However, he did not go there right away. Instead, he took Ding Si's advice and visited the lower deck first, managing to collect a few more business cards from different chambers of commerce. The services they provided slightly differed from each other, but they mostly charged similar prices. The one thing that they shared in common was that their game points were cheap. Of course, a particular risk presented itself when trading with them. Compared to all the other chambers, Fulu had the best reputation as it had been around since the very beginning. After that, Zhang Heng tucked all the business cards away into his pocket and rode the elevator to the third deck. This was the most crowded place on the entire ship. Someone was giving a briefing on a podium about the most effective way to accumulate game points. Zhang Heng then looked for a seat and listened to what he had to say. Soon, though, he felt that the person would always change topics the moment he reached the key point of his speech. He is telling us useless stuff. The formula for acquiring game points is the top secret of the chambers. No one would simply let it out. He's just trying to recruit others to join him. The middle-aged man extended his hand while talking to Zhang Heng. You can call me Professor. I hope you don't misunderstand. This is just my nickname. I think it's rude to address someone by a number. You either get a fake name or a nickname for others to address you. You can call me Simon. Zhang Heng shook his hand. Welcome to the game, Simon. Where are your teammates? Teammates? I think you should be a newbie, huh? The invitation said that every quest has its specific challenges. It is recommended for the players to form a team first before entering the quest. Chapter 90, Dreamland of Death. Everyone has their strengths limited in some way. We all come from different circumstances, and we have different forte as well. Some people love using their fists to solve their problems. Some prefer to use their brains to overcome their difficulties. Forming a team with others would allow you to overcome your weaknesses. After all, we are not superhumans. Your character panel should remind you of this as well. The previous quests that you have completed were probably designed to be completed alone. However, you will be in deep trouble if you come across a quest that cannot be completed alone. Of course, solo quests have their benefits. The yield for each quest is fixed, and you get everything that you earned. Being in a team, however, would mean that you'll have to distribute your loot equally. Usually, people would only go solo after they have become stronger. Still, the risk of failure is very high. You can make all kinds of mistakes when you go solo on a quest. Zhang Heng was dumbfounded. The old man with the Chinese attire was the one who had invited him to join this quest. It seemed that the other players entered the game differently. He did not receive the invitation that the professor mentioned earlier. Until now, he had also not met other players at the game stop. It was no wonder that he was still playing the game alone. Technically speaking, the old man did not actually put his life in danger. The extra 24 hours that he had was for him to solo the quest. This bonus time he had substantially lowered the risks of all the quests that he played. Unfortunately, my team is full now. Otherwise, I would have given you a test before allowing you to join my team. My advice is to go to the city that you live in and look for a team to join. This is going to be a long game. Your mental and physical state will undergo great stress, and you will eventually need someone to share it with. After all, we can never share these things with our friends and family. Your team members will be your pillar of support. Zhang Heng knew that the professor was right about everything. Unfortunately, he also knew that he was meant to keep those secrets to himself and not share it with others. Considering that he spent 2 years alone marooned on a desolated island, he had no problems with staying and playing alone. I heard someone mentioning something about a guild. What is that? Guilds and chambers of commerce are formed by players, with both providing different services. Though you are still a newbie, I'm pretty sure that you've heard that the real world is actually not as safe as we thought it is. That is why certain players band together and form a guild to look after each other's backs. Some of them even volunteered to deal with the supernatural stuff that happens around them. Sounds good to me. Why are you so against the idea of joining a guild? Earlier, the professor had criticized the guild member that's speaking on the stage. Zhang Heng could sense hostility between his words. Guilds are supposed to exist to serve the greater good. As time passed, the definition of guild changed. In a guild, everyone was supposed to take care of each other. Sadly, when certain members become more and more powerful, they wanted more than just taking care of each other. Due to this, some guilds have become unstable, the contributors to the chaos right now. We all have different opinions about guilds. Right now, I'm happy with my own team, and I have no interest in joining any other guilds. After chatting for a while, the professor descended to the first deck for a round of cards, and Zhang Heng stayed on the third to listen to speeches from different guilds. An hour and a half later, everyone stopped what they were doing and gathered at the ballroom. Zhang Heng came up with a rough estimate that there were around 4,000 to 5,000 people here. There were more than 500 items to be auctioned off today. Among these were 12 valuable items that required the bidder to raise their number if they wanted to bid for the item. As for the rest of the 488 items, players could only bid for them online. The system would then determine the highest bidder. While walking around, Zhang Heng crossed paths with Ding Si once again. It seemed like he had just closed in on a deal as he was smiling from ear to ear. He even greeted Zhang Heng first. He whispered, "According to a rumor I heard just now, I was told that a B-grade game item would on auction later. And there are a few unique C-grade game items as well. Are B-grade game items rare?" Of course, there are less than 200 B-grade game items within the entire circle of players right now. Most of the players I know would never sell these off. If I'm not mistaken, it was a B-grade item that left everyone in shock last year. Ding Si was really excited as he described the game item. As a businessman, he was always infatuated by objects that carried extreme value. "Dreamland of Death. It's an item that can be used to curse others," Ding Si exclaimed. Everyone was afraid of this thing a few months ago. It can kill someone in their sleep when they are dreaming. The way to trigger this item is unknown. How the curse is lifted is unknown as well. A few elites in the player base have been cursed. The guild leader of Silver Wing was the owner of an A-grade game item and managed to survive the curse. In the end, a few guilds had to work together to eliminate the previous owner of the item. Since there's only one, it has been decided that they would auction it off. It's basically impossible for anybody to bid for it. Leaders of these powerful guilds would never allow such a powerful item to land in the hands of an unknown stranger. I'm pretty sure that one of the guilds would eventually get it, and the rest would take the game points instead. Anyway, their financial strength is unparalleled amongst all guilds and players, he continued. While they were talking, the auction finally began. The auctioneer was a 60-year-old man who looked really serious. The wrinkles on his face resembled the bark of an old tree. He had no intention to hide his face. Just like the bartender lady, he should be one of the employees of the committee as well. He waited until everyone was seated before presenting his 5-minute-long welcome speech. Then, he introduced the first item to be auctioned. Escape Dagger. Grade C, it can be used to teleport within a small area. Remaining uses. 3. You can check out its description after you bid for the item. The starting bid is 1,200 game points. Every additional bid costs 50 game points. The bidding ends when the hammer drops 3 times. Let's begin. Damn, that's a good item, said Dingxi. Are you going to bid for it? It is a good item. Items that can be used to improve in-game survival are usually extremely costly. I'm here to looking for treasure for Fu Lu. It's not for myself. Items that are undervalued are my target tonight, answered an excited Dingxi while switching on his tablet. Chapter 91, Silent Bidding. While everyone else started bidding for the escape dagger, Zhang Heng and Dingxi unlocked the tablets that were placed in front of them. This was his first time seeing so many game items all at once. There was a total of 80 pages, where a photo of each game item was displayed followed by its name, grade, and a short description. By showing all the items on tabs, the buyers would at least have some knowledge about what they were about to pay for. Of course, the auction house would not reveal every single detail. The value of Dreamland of Death, for example, would significantly drop if anyone knew the way to trigger it and killing someone with it. It was a risky business after all when one bid for items in an auction. When it came to risks, the escape dagger, for instance, was an item that came to scrutiny. Its description mentioned everything except for the distance it could teleport. The buyers had to make an educated guess by themselves and would have to accept that it was all fair game if eventually the escape dagger did not live up to their expectations. Zhang Heng noticed that Dingxi did not look at the merchandise that was listed on the first few pages of the catalog. Instead, he went all the way to the last page. Dingxi put on a smile when he realized Zhang Heng peeking at his tab. There are around 200 unidentified game items in this auction. Astute observation is required when checking out the stuff listed at the end of the catalog. Take a look if you're interested. These items are all set at a minimum reserve of 100 game points. However, most of them are F grade, where only a small portion of them are of E grade. And if you are extremely lucky, you might be able to spot a C or even B grade item or two. 2 years ago, a guy bought an unidentified game item. To his shock, it was a B grade item when he identified it. That is what I call by a 1 in a million exception. Usually, players would make a loss when purchasing unidentified items. It's all a gamble, you know. The players who have listed their items here in this category have done a lot of research themselves. They have to be very sure that the items that they sell here actually cost less than 100 game points each. Zhang Heng then flipped to the last page, coming to a list of items with serial numbers written beside them. Players had put down their bidding prices beside some, but most were still available, having nobody bidding on them yet. For some people, they have a real hard time deciding on which item to bid on, so they would usually bid for items that others had bid for. To be honest, this is definitely an unwise move. The bidder wouldn't know when to stop since they have no prior knowledge whatsoever about the item. Say you manage to find the item you really wanted, there is still the option to wait up until the last second and bid on it right before the system closes. Zhang Heng then thanked Dingxi for sharing all these tips with him. Though information like this was hardly a trade secret, It showed that Ding Si had lots of experience in maximizing profit during an auction. It was kind of him to share all those pointers with Zhang Heng, although it wasn't necessary for him to do so. Don't sweat it. Consider it as my long-term investment in you. Next time, if you wish to purchase a game item, you won't have to wait until the end of the year to do so. You can always come to Fu Lu and look for us. Our prices are always reasonable. Zhang Heng did not impulsively scan through the unidentified items, instead, checking out the game items that were already identified first. He wanted to know how they priced all those items. Basically, an E-grade item would cost around 80 to 100 game points. D-grade items were around 300 to 600 game points. The gap grew wider when it came to C-grade items, usually costing thousands. Of course, prices of C-grade items varied depending on function. If it was an extremely useful item, the prices could go way beyond thousands. In the end, the escape dagger was sold at 2,050 game points. That's overpriced. No doubt the item is useful, but it definitely does not cost 2,050 game points. I think 1,500 is a more reasonable price. I suppose items that could save lives are usually in high demand. Maybe the person bidding for it needs it urgently. After that, the auctioneer presented the second item. He opened up a box made out of tule wood and displayed the piece of bone inside for everyone to see. Moresby bone. Grade, C. It can be used to cycle time. Remaining use, 2. You can get more information about it after you receive the item. The starting price is at 1,900 game points. Every bid increases the item's price by 50. The deal will be sealed when the hammer knocks 3 times. Let the bidding begin. There was total silence, where not a single soul placed a bid for at least half a minute. The Moresby bone was different from the escape dagger. Judging by the provided description, it was hard figuring out what it could be used for, and besides, a 1,900 starting price was undoubtedly a princely one. However, the starting prices of all these items sent to auction house tonight were actually determined by professional appraisers from the committee. That was why no one doubted its value. Their only concern, however, was that they would be unable to fully utilize the item after purchase. After all, these items all cost billions after a yuan conversion. To make matters worse, it was only left with 2 remaining uses. Even the wealthiest person here would think twice before purchasing it. This item is actually quite interesting, muttered Ding Si while rubbing his chin. You mean? Asked Zhang Heng. Amongst all present here tonight, Zhang Heng was the only one who knew how to fully utilize the bone because he was the one who had asked the bartender lady to identify it. He was also the one who entrusted her to auction it off. Although sifting through the entire catalog, he didn't see the item listed anywhere. So, he suspected that this must be of the 12 valuable items which required other players to bid on it with their paddles. Time series items are extremely rare, though their starting prices can still be reasonable. However, the phrase cycling time does not carry too much information. Are you trying to say that there might be no bids? No, that is impossible. The rarity of this item itself ensures that someone will eventually bid for it. Right now, nobody is raising their number paddles because they are trying to estimate its value. Right after Ding Si finished talking, someone raised their paddle. Soon, there was a second and then a third person bid for it. However, the atmosphere this time was different from the escape dagger bid. Only a few people placed their wagers, dragging on until a few moments before the hammer came down for the third time before bidding on it. The situation gradually turned awkward as the bidding went on and on, seeming to be a never-ending process. 10 minutes later, the auctioneer frowned and made a new announcement. From now on, every bid costs 100 game points. All the bidders had to think twice now. As time went on, fewer and fewer people placed their bids, though the bidding speed had increased. Notably, there were only 3 people bidding for it right now. It appeared that the 3 were determined to get their hands on this item, come what may. When the price had reached a staggering 2,600 game points, one of them decided to quit. Then, when it reached the 2,900 game point mark, another hesitated for a moment before he threw in the towel. In the end, the hammer price for the Moresby bone was 2,900 game points. "This sure is an excellent price for a C-grade item," Ding Si exclaimed. This time, he did not give an estimated price for the Moresby bone. Even a professional like him could not determine its value without looking at its full report. However, Zhang Heng knew that whoever bought the Moresby bone made no losses. This item was actually an extremely handy one, being able to create a continuous 60-second time loop. Within this 60 seconds, no matter what the user did, this 60-second time frame could be rolled back. Technically, its user could stay in a 60-second time loop forever until somebody deliberately broke it. Chapter 92, Paris Arrow. Zhang Heng was really interested in the effect of Moresby bone. The bartender lady identified it for him, and he'd also tested it out for himself. Unlike his other game items, it was actually extremely difficult to trigger the Moresby bone's effect. In fact, a very particular ritual needed to be performed before one could utilize it. Thankfully, it was not that hard to get the materials for this ritual. Around 9 hours was needed for the entire ritual to be completed. If performed successfully, the user would enter the time loop. The realm within this loop was a world of nothingness. Not even death would happen in the realm of the time loop. This was actually the perfect place for one to master their skills. Archery would be a good example. In this realm, the user would not feel hungry, thirsty, or tired. With determination, one could actually train until their archery skills maxed out. However, no one would be able to withstand such a boring routine for too long. Zhang Heng estimated that even a person with a strong mental fortitude would not be able to stay within the time loop's realm for more than half a month. That was a place void of anything. Zhang Heng wondered how the monster called Moresby stayed inside for tens of thousands of years. Just like entering the realm of the time loop, if the user wished to exit the realm, someone would need to prepare the ritual again. This was why the Alkas were stuck inside the realm after they exterminated Moresby. If the old man in the Chinese attire did not break the balance of time, that monster would have probably been stuck inside the time loop for eternity. Despite this, the item kept its value. The premise of being able to live forever inside the time loop itself was attractive enough for someone to bid for it. Zhang Heng let this item go because he had an extra 24 hours every day. Besides, he was new to the game, and he had just completed 3 quests. Sure, he could earn game points pretty quickly, but the reward was simply not good enough. After deducting the 5% processing fee, Zhang Heng received a total of 2,755 game points. With this amount, he was now officially a bidder at the auction house. As he flipped through the catalog again, something captured his attention on page 4. Paris Arrow, Grade D description. Once the arrow is launched, it would automatically land on the target's weak point. Current price, 410. The name of this arrow reminded Zhang Heng about a story he heard when he was still a kid. It went like this. During the Trojan War, Achilles was the strongest hero from Greece. Legend said that he was the son of one of the heroes from the Argonauts, namely Peleus and the ocean queen Thetis. There were many versions of his story. One of them was that his mother, Thetis, was told by the Queen of Fate that she would be killed on the battlefield. So she soaked her son, Achilles, in the river Styx to turn him into an indestructible hero. As she was holding his heel as she dipped him, his heel later became his only weakness. When he grew up, he turned into a war hero, killing countless enemies during the Trojan War. He was the one who had eliminated Hector, the most powerful warrior from Troy. After that, he was involved in a fight between Apollo, the god of the sun. According to Gustav Schwab, the author of Gods and Heroes of Ancient Greece, Achilles was killed when Apollo shot an arrow at his heel. The name and description of this game item matched the arrow that was mentioned in the Greek epic poem, Odyssey. After knowing that players would face unknown danger in the real world, Zhang Heng wanted to arm himself well to make sure that he could protect him and others. The Paris arrow matched perfectly with his LV2 archery skill. As long as he could aim and launch the arrow at his target, it would automatically aim for the target's weak spots. This was actually a niche game item, where only players with an archery skill would be attracted by it. That would mean only a few players would fight for it. So, half an hour later, the price of the Paris arrow had increased by only 65 game points. As compared to other game items, the Paris arrow was evidently not as popular. Amid the auction, Ding Xi's cell phone rang non-stop, seeming as if he was getting more business by the minute. Zhang Heng was not surprised, as those participating in the auction were here to look for items that could help them in the game. If what they wanted to buy was in high demand, and they lacked game points, they would frequently look toward the Chamber of Commerce for help. Some would even sell off game items that they possessed in exchange for more game points. In that 1 hour, Ding Xi's fingers never left his cell phone, closing one deal after another. However, after leaving the auction house for a short while, he seemed to receive fewer messages when he returned. "I just closed a big deal. I'm left with very few game points. That would mean my job for today is done," Ding Xi sighed in euphoria. "Congrats." The auction was about to end soon, and Zhang Heng checked on the Paris arrow again, only to find out that the price had increased to 445. So, he subsequently bid another 20 game points on it. In the end, he managed to obtain the Paris arrow for a total of 465 game points. Other than that, a pair of earrings captured Zhang Heng's attention as well. It allowed the user to gain 100% fire resistance. However, its price had started climbing higher and higher, and in the end, he had to give the item up. As he looked at all the unidentified items in the catalog again, he noticed all kinds of items. A Samsung cell phone and Gucci handbag were listed as well. With only pictures to guide him, it was hard to determine their function. It was not necessary, though, for him to try his luck on all these items. However, just as he was about to close the catalog, a picture captured his attention. It was a key. The engraving on its end was extremely familiar to him. Suddenly, Zhang Heng remembered where he had seen the pattern. Earlier, when he activated the shadow moment, he stared right into the crow's eyes, and though the picture was a little blurry, he still managed to recognize the crow engraved on it. Amongst all the game items he possessed, Shadow Moment was the only item with an unknown origin. Who knows, he might just find more information about his Shadow Moment through this key. The Shadow Moment was a D-grade item. That would mean this key was probably a D-grade item as well. Right now, no one had placed bids for it. That would mean Zhang Heng would be able to acquire this item with only 100 game points. As luck would have it, he managed to obtain the key at its base price. After the final purchase, he was now left with 2,292 game points. He then closed the catalog, having no further intention to purchase any more game items. The auction was coming to an end, and the auctioneer announced the last valuable item. Chapter 93, Showstopper. Many of the guests already knew what the last item for auction was, but when the auctioneer took it out from the Thule box and presented it before the guests, it caused quite the stir. Dreamland of Death. Grade B causes the target to enter a lethal dreamland. Its remaining number of uses is a secret. More details will only be revealed after the auction. The starting bid is 60,000 game points, where additional bids will cost 500 points. After 3 last calls, the hammer will fall and the sale is concluded. Get ready to place your bids. The elderly auctioneer conducted the auction professionally, maintaining a serious expression on his bony face as he made the introduction in a calm and composed manner. Right after he had spoken, a voice called out, "Let's not waste time and just start from 70,000. The auditorium broke into an uproar. That was merely the first bid, and the price had already been raised by 10,000 points. This opening was borderline farcical. Considering Ding Xi had already completed his work for the day, he turned himself into a spectator for this bid. Currently, there are 3 most powerful guilds with more than 2,000 players between them. After years of massive expansion and having made a large fortune, they are the only ones who can afford to make such an exorbitant bid. They are probably the ones performing at tonight's final round of auction." Ding Xi paused for a moment and then continued. "No one would feel safe knowing that this deadly weapon is in someone else's hand. The 3 guild leaders of Silver Wing is the prime example of this case, so this is going to be a very fierce bid." The way the events unfolded did not surprise Ding Xi at all. The 70,000-point starting price did not seem to scare away the potential competitors. In less than 10 seconds, someone swiftly followed up with a bid, and then another one from the other side. Among the many bidders tonight, no more than 3 were qualified to raise their paddles. Needless to say, these were the representatives of their respective guilds. On their own, Grade B game items were already very rare. On top of that, Dreamland of Death's usage outshone those of the same grade. During such times, the 3 major guilds would not show courtesy to each other. In a matter of 10 minutes, the price had shot up to a whopping 87,500 points. At this point, all 3 guilds began to show a little more caution, and the rate of the bidding gradually slowed. When it reached 89,000, one of the guilds backed out, notifying that they were unable to compete. The 2 bidders who were left, apparently rejuvenated by their competitor's exit, were in full spirits to soldier on. Very quickly, the price of the Dreamland of Death escalated, breaking through the 90,000-point barrier. The party with the lower bid suddenly grew silent. There were many ways to kill that cost far less than 90,000 points, and even if taken from a purely defensive perspective, that price was still too expensive. Just as the winner of this chess game was about to be revealed, someone sitting in a corner at the back of the auditorium suddenly raised their paddle and said, 100,000 points. A furor broke out in the hall. Many were interested in the Dreamland of Death. Still, everybody knew that it would eventually fall into the hands of one of the major guilds, because it required not just desire, but also bottomless pockets to be able to win the bid. Despite the odds, right before the high-stakes show came to a close, a 4th person entered the picture out of thin air, raising the bid price by another 10,000 points. At this point, coughing up 100,000 points for a B-grade game item was pure madness. All eyes immediately turned to the showstopper. Due to the stipulated rules, no one was able to see the face of the person. One could only make out that it was a tall woman in black sunglasses. After calling out her bid, she kept quiet and went back to chewing her gum. Hushed waves of whispers began echoing throughout the auditorium. The players were all discussing the girl, wondering who she was and where she came from. In the end, it was apparent that nobody knew her identity. None of the 3 major guilds were prepared for this unprecedented turn of events, leaving their representatives stumped. Zhang Heng noticed the strange expression on Ding Si's face and asked, "What is it? Do you know her?" Ding Si shook his head. "No, I don't. But 40 minutes ago, she came to me and exchanged 3 C-grade game items for a loan of 4,500 game points. That's basically all the credits I have." Zhang Heng raised his brow. He remembered seeing how Ding Si was in a good mood, saying that he had completed his work in advance. Could it be possible that she has also loaned from other chambers of commerce before she could gather a total of 100,000 game points? Theoretically speaking, it's possible. Quite a few chambers of commerce roam the ship, all ready to do business. They probably carry around quite a few points on them. If she made contact with them, she could have gathered this amount. But in practice, it's implausible. There's no way a person could have so many game items for collateral in the first place. Ding Si frowned. This is going to be a big problem for the 3 major guilds. They wouldn't have come for this auction with more than 100,000 points on them. Dreamland of Death may be great and all, but it's not worth the price. The only problem is that if this thing falls into the hands of someone with ill intentions, all the effort they went through to get here would have been for nothing. As he was speaking, Ding Si's phone vibrated and he picked it up. When the call ended, he looked up, astonished. This is impossible. All the chambers of commerce have run out of game points. Is she really going to win the bid on her own? This woman is incredible. On the other side, the 3 representatives of the guilds were in panic mode. For them, having the Dreamland of Death in their possession was the most secure and ideal situation. Anything less than that, and they would definitely be unable to accept the outcome. Although they were not on good terms with each other, they would still act per the rules. The worst-case scenario would be for the game item to fall into the hands of some psycho. The tragic incident, involving the guild leader of Silver Wing, could very well repeat itself. The only way to solve this is for one of them to borrow from the other. Then they could defeat that woman. 100,000 points is a steep price. No one wants to be seen as an imprudent idiot, Ding Si explained. He appeared to be somewhat distracted, stroking the black briefcase on his knees as his eyes stared blankly. This was the first time Zhang Heng had ever seen him so nervous. The auctioneer had dropped the hammer for the second time and was about to proceed to the countdown. The three guilds were still negotiating and had not come to an agreement, attempting to request for the auction to be suspended, only to be ignored by the old auctioneer. The girl in the shades was chewing her gum more rapidly. 3 seconds later, the hammer dropped, and the auctioneer announced the results of the auction's final round. Shortly, the steward standing at the side carried the Thule box to the woman. She had just spent 100,000 points on a game item she did not even bother to inspect. She simply took the thing and tossed it into her little handbag. After that, she disappeared from her seat into the darkness. Just as she was about to leave, Ding Si jumped up from his seat and yelled, "Hurry, hurry, catch her." Chapter 94, Storm. Ding Si was a step too late. In fact, even he had shouted a little earlier, it would have still been pointless. In this exclusive auction transcript, players were not restricted and could leave at any time they wanted. Ding Si knew that it was useless to do that, merely reacting instinctively out of desperation. The moment the woman in sunglasses disappeared before his eyes, Ding Si grabbed his hair in frustration. He was not the only one regretting. Someone else on the other side yelled as well, and a young man fainted on his seat. Many disgruntled groans and boos from the crowd quickly ensued. As Zhang Heng was sitting right next to Ding Si, he too saw very clearly when the woman was about to leave. The high-strung Ding Si opened his black briefcase and pulled out the 3 Thule wood boxes. To his dismay, all the game items inside were gone. Instead, in their place were 3 smiley faces made out of clay mockingly grinning away as if laughing at his gullibility. After the outburst, Ding Si deflated, drained of all energy, eventually slumping onto his seat. Tonight, Fu Lu wasn't the only one deceived, for nearly all chambers of commerce who carried points with them had been swindled by that woman. One by one, Thule boxes were opened, and within them the mocking, smiling piece of clay, a sight that stung the eyes of its bearer. Zhang Heng's stomach sank, and he was flummoxed. Logically, Ding Si's keen eyes and years of experience should prevented him from falling for such a cheap trick. Moreover, since they were all in the transcript, the players should have been able to access the information of the game items on their personal screens. Nonetheless, that woman managed to fool everyone's eyes with a few pieces of cheap clay. When all was said and done, she had managed to plunder the coveted dreamland of death from the 3 major guilds without having to pay a single point. Surely all this sounded as coming from a myth of legends, but here, it happened right before his eyes. In the entire hall, the only person unaffected by the event was probably the auctioneer on the stage. After he had sold the last item, his job was done. He gave a simple closing speech, before taking off his gloves and leaving, completely ignoring the commotion brewing among the guests. By the time they realized what had just happened, the representatives of the chambers of commerce had already left. The losses they had suffered this time had to be reported back to their respective handlers. At the same time, they would also launch a hunt for the woman back in the real world. Ding Si disappeared without even saying goodbye. The other players, on the other hand, were either having heated discussion amongst themselves or had left with their companions. Zhang Heng collected the Paris arrow and the unidentified key from the committee. When he saw that there was not much time left, he decided to leave. And so he returned to the lounge. The light music had been replaced by classy jazz, and the bartender seemed to be in a pretty good mood, humming along with the melody as she fussed over her new project, stirring durian pulp into rum. This is a night worth celebrating. You should have a drink, a small self-appreciation for entering the ranks of the rich. She was the one who sent the Moresby bones to the auction. She knew all too well of its value, of course. Zhang Heng looked at the durian-flavored rum and was disheartened, politely refusing her offer of the pungent brew, and handed her the unidentified key and necklace from Simone instead. "Please help me identify these items," he asked of her, then paused. "Also, hand me another membership card and a mission failure exemption card." He had always wanted to buy the mission failure exemption card since a while ago, but was a little hesitant about the membership card. But after considering the fact that he would be here for a while and the possibility of anything going wrong at any moment, he decided it was best to purchase it as soon as possible. "I admire guys who know how to splurge," the bartender commended him as she took out a calculator. "The total for this item is 1,407 points." With the deal sealed, Zhang Heng's game points were reduced from 2,292 to 785. After he had made the payment, he thought of a question and decided to ask while she was still in a good mood. "Did you know that the screen displays wrong information sometimes?" The bartender raised her brows, clearly taken aback by the question. Quickly, she blurted out something in response. "That's impossible. The information displayed on the panels is more accurate than your nightly news." However, having said that, she seemed to be hesitant and added, "But there's a catch. If you have a special game prop, the possibility of that happening can't be completely ruled out. That said, I'm afraid only a grade game props can pull off such a thing." "Why? Did you encounter it or something?" The incident at the auction tonight was no secret, where Zhang Heng believed that the news of the heist would have swiftly spread like wildfire within the circle of players. Having no need to hide anything, Zhang Heng directly told her. "Someone used clay to fool all the chambers of commerce present on the ship, then used that money to buy the final auction item, in turn snatching it away from the three major guilds. This method sounds very much like that guy, modus operandi. Tusk, he finally showed his face. Guess he couldn't stand the loneliness anymore," the bartender lady muttered, evidently not intending to provide any further explanation. "From now onwards, you have to be very careful when dealing with other players. There have been more and more problems surfacing recently. It looks like another storm is brewing, and I'm sure it's coming soon." This time, Zhang Heng left Desire City much earlier than before. It was only 23:16 when he walked out of the gate. There was still some time left before time stopped, so he decided to take a look at Paris Arrow. Although he had an arrow, he had been keeping his SF recurve bow in school lately, and so he had to go back to retrieve it. Zhang Heng hired a yellow bicycle and rode to the nearest station. At this hour, especially here in the industrial area, the bus stops were practically empty and deserted. He parked the bicycle by the road, lowering his head and discreetly locking his ride. At that very moment, he heard a loud rustling coming from the green zone by the street. Zhang Heng immediately went into high alert. Quickly, he turned around, clutching the Paris Arrow in his hand as he took 2 steps backward. Both Ding Si and the professor repeatedly warned him that it was never safe being in the circle of players. That shocking scam at the end of the auction was like a vivid lesson to him. As a result, he now became a lot more cautious of his surroundings. "Who is it?" The rustling stopped the moment he spoke. Whoever was behind the green zone must have been startled. After 5 seconds, a shadow emerged from the bush. It was a black stray cat, fleeing into the darkness with its tail tucked between its legs. Was it all a false alarm? Before he could investigate, the bus arrived at the station. Zhang Heng put away his Paris Arrow and glanced at the bush one last time before boarding. Chapter 95. Exam Week and the Gathering. The problem could have all been in his position. Anyhow, Zhang Heng attempted to shoot his Paris Arrow a few times, only to find that this arrow that cost him 465 game points was no different from any conventional arrow. Perhaps it was something to do with his chosen target. Theoretically, boards, apples, and cups had no weak points, all being inanimate objects. Zhang Heng deduced that the Paris Arrow might only work on living organisms. Right now, however, no suitable target was available for him to test his theory. 3 days later, the necklace and key were identified. Zhang Heng received an express delivery from the bartender, immediately opening it up and taking out one of the cards from it. Name: Hunter's Blessing. Grade F. Effect increases the chance of encountering certain types of prey. This item was similar to the necklace that Simon gave him and the lucky rabbit foot that he owned. It was hard to determine if increasing the chances of encountering prey was a good or bad thing. To a hunter, this item would allow them to improve their yield. However, if hunting weren't in the books, bringing this around would cause unnecessary trouble. After that, Zhang Heng placed the necklace inside the Thule wood box that he bought from the bartender. Then, he looked at the identification report of the key. Name Shadow Key. Grade E. Effect can be used to transform your target into shadow form. Lasts 3 minutes. Remaining uses 3. The price of an E-grade item usually ranged between 80 to 100 points. Earlier, Zhang Heng had spent a total of 100 game points to purchase this item. Albeit a little bit overpriced, this was all very normal. Typically, unidentified items belonged in the F-grade category. E-grade were uncommon. D and C grades were even rarer. As for B-grade items, it had only happened once so far. What Zhang Heng was interested in the most was the connection between the Shadow Key and Shadow Moment. Each time Zhang Heng activated his Shadow Moment, he could sense that the crow was trying to tell him something. He had a hunch that if he managed to check out the background of the crow, he would gain a better understanding of this supernatural item. Right now, though, he had a more pressing matter to deal with. The issue in question was his final exam. The exam week would officially begin right after the new year. From the 3rd to the 7th, he was to attend the public course exam. When that ended, it was then a professional course exam next. It was definitely an intense period where every night there would be a power cut at Zhang Heng's hostel. Anticipating the time it would happen, he had to finish studying everything before it happened. Otherwise, he would just ring it out in the corridor and study there for the rest of the night. Even before the new year, the corridors were packed with zealous students. When Zhang Heng went out at 12 a.m., he could always see a group of students cramming hard on their books. Amongst these were Wei Jiangyang and Chen Huadong, where they stole a little time in between their busy schedule to read some manga. In this challenging time, they seemed to have found happiness amid suffering. Zhang Heng met Shen Zixi twice while he was studying in the study room, but after crossing paths with each other that night, they did not talk much after that. All they did was nod to each other when they met again. On the other hand, Su Jiang the lowly had always considered Zhang Heng her best friend. Ever since he used a bow and arrow to scare away bad guys from harassing her, she started to call Zhang Heng her Ironman, and she was not afraid to tell everyone about it. There was this once when Zhang Heng met her at the canteen. He was around 5 meters away from her when all of a sudden, she started to shout Ironman at him ever so passionately. Immediately, half of the students in the canteen turned around to stare at her. After some days, Zhang Heng finally finished his last paper for this term. Alas, his second year in the university was coming to an end. Chen Huadong went as far as taking out his entire pile of photocopied study material and tore them into pieces before throwing them away in the water house. While returning to them, Chen Huadong realized that he left his cup there. Naturally, he turned back to go and get it. On the other hand, Jiang Weiyang was just as happy. He spent the entire night attempting to memorize notes that were written down with Chen Huadong. Coffee was the pillar they relied on to stay awake throughout the exam. When the exam was over, though, all the sleepiness miraculously disappeared. They both suggested that everyone should go to Food Street to grab some good food and have fun. Since everyone was cool with the idea, Jiang Weiyang proceeded to call his girlfriend to join along. It seemed like Han Zixiao's dorm wanted to celebrate the end of the exams too. So, Wei Jiangyang had to inform them about the rendezvous point. However, the atmosphere quickly really awkward when all of them gathered at the same spot. Ma Wei was not the kind of guy that had a smooth mouth with the ladies, nor did he spend much time with them. Basically, he was here simply to eat his food and drink his beer, not intending on sharing a single word to the others. As for Chen Huadong and Su Jiang, they were usually the stimulus of the group. With the chattery duo present, they should be able to get everyone to mingle. Unfortunately, tonight had to be the night where they were both quiet. During Christmas Eve, Zhang Heng sensed something wrong between Chen Huadong and Su Jiang when he agreed to go to the amusement park with him. After the camping trip, both were always seen together as if connected by glue. Then, all of a sudden, they stopped talking. Right now, they behaved like strangers who had never met. When it came to the love matters of others, it was inappropriate for an outsider to comment about it. Amongst them, Shen Zixi had the highest EQ. She was typically the go-to girl when it came to matters like this. However, it seemed that she was terribly distracted, popping out her cell phone from time to time and checking for messages. And that marked the end of the first term of the second year in university. The most awkward incident of the night happened right after the meal. When everyone walked out of the restaurant, they saw a black Mercedes parked at the entrance. This time, Zhang Heng took a good look at the driver. Unlike the rumor about her hanging out with a bald old man, the driver was a young stallion. Judging by his demeanor, he should still be studying as well. Having a somewhat fit physique, it seemed that he spent a reasonable amount of time working out every day. Seeing the whole bunch walking out of the restaurant, the young man stepped down from the car and graciously opened the car door for Shen Zixi. "There's something I need to do. I'll take my leave first," said Shen Zixi. She entered the car after the Han Xiaxia wanted to say something, but she stopped midway, only sighing as the car silently rolled away. "I have asked her in private before. She told me that she has no intention of getting a boyfriend. She told me that she wanted to do something meaningful. I have never seen her defending herself against all those horrible rumors. Initially, I wanted to believe her. Right now, I'm not sure if I should." "I will always support her no matter what," Su Jiang interrupted. "That is because you are just like her," said Chen Huadong with a smile. Seeing that the two of them had their horns locked, they quickly stopped them from doing so. "Both of you, the winter holidays are coming soon. We won't be seeing each other for a month. Can we just end this gathering peacefully?" "Right, Zhang Heng," said Wei Jiangyang. He wanted Zhang Heng to support his notion, but he looked distracted by the fact that Shen Zixi left them. Wei Jiang's heart dropped immediately. The matter between Chen Huadong and Su Jiang was still unresolved, and he saw that something unpleasant was playing in Zhang Heng's mind. Rumor had it that Shen Zixi and Zhang Heng used to flirt with each other. But then again, that was just a rumor. He wanted to know what Zhang Heng really thought about it. When Zhang Heng realized that Wei Jiangyang was staring at him, he quickly turned around and gave everyone a quick nod. "See you guys next year." Chapter 96, Black Sailai. After the exams, the winter holidays were finally here. From today until the 4th of March, the entire university would go on break. Most of the students left their hostels the very next day the exams were over. Wei Jiangyang was the first to leave from Zhang Heng's dorm. He had planned for a vacation to Qingdao with Han Xiaxio, his girlfriend, before heading back to his hometown. After that, Chen Huadong was the second to leave. He brought almost nothing with him except for 2 hard drives that had tons of anime in them. As for Ma Wei, he wanted to earn some money first before heading back to his hometown and planned to work till the eve of Chinese New Year. As of today, he had taken up a job as a home tutor for 4 families. He rested for one night before quickly reading up some high school physics and chemistry. Zhang Heng, Chen Huadong, and Wei Jiangyang had always respected Ma Wei a lot. From the first day he enrolled in this university, he had never hidden his family's conditions from them. Though they weren't doing well, he never used it as an excuse to exploit anyone. All the while, he worked part-time while studying to help out his family. If placed in the same situation, Zhang Heng knew that he would never be able to do better. He then gave Ma Wei an encouraging pat on the shoulder. Zhang Heng bought a train ticket and was supposed to head back to his hometown next week. There was, however, something essential for him to do before he left the place. At 23:37, Zhang Heng opened up the doors that led to the bar's lounge on the 2nd floor. After greeting the bartender, he looked for an empty seat and set the alarm that was under it to 23:55. As he closed his eyes, a new journey began. Verifying player's identity. Verification complete. Randomly drawing the 4th quest for player 7958. Draw completed. Your new quest is Black Sail. Pirates from New Providence have threatened all trades that are carried out in this area. Every civilized country in this world considers pirates as a public enemy. Quest goal: you are on a ship. Set anchor at Nassau and build your own force. Quest mode: solo. Time flow rate: 3600. 1 hour in the real world is equivalent to 150 days in the game. The player will be sent back to the real world after 300 in-game days. Friendly reminder: the game will begin in 5 seconds. Please get ready. Just as Zhang Heng was cracking his brain to figure out where in the world this New Providence was, he heard a deafening boom right beside him. The wall of his cabin had been penetrated by a flying cannonball, crushing the table inside it as well. This was the very first time Zhang Heng experienced such an intense opening. During his last quest in Finland, he was provided with a short grace period of safety right after entering the quest. It allowed him to familiarize himself with his surroundings. As for this round of the game, he was greeted in kind by a cannonball. The worst part was, this was just the beginning of his quest. After that, he could hear multiple cannons being fired and people running around frantically along the corridor outside the cabin. Immediately, he took a good look at his surroundings. Earlier, he guessed that this quest wouldn't be set in the modern world the moment he heard the word pirate. The cabin's furnishing and the clothes he wore looked ancient. From all that, Zhang Heng could deduce that he was on a vessel in old Europe. However, he was oblivious as to what the exact date was. The rise of pirates could be traced back to the Lucan from 14th century BC. The ancient Egyptians recorded a fight between them in Cyprus. After that, Viking pirates who ruled the sea from the 8th to the 11th century became extremely famous as well. Although numbering only a few, their ruthlessness at sea made the pirates an infamous menace. They were definitely not afraid of death. Back in the modern world, a gaming company even designed a class called the Berserker, inspired by the Viking pirates. In the 17th century, Fujian and Guangdong of China were invaded by pirates as well. The golden age of piracy took place during the last stages of the Renaissance. More sea routes had been added, and colonies were constantly expanding. This had made it possible for trading at sea to get better. Merchants and traders regularly encountered pirates when they sailed the high seas. Some powerful pirates would even go up against the navy and attack colonies. After that, the navies gradually became stronger and piracy slowly died down. In the modern world, some small-time pirates still loitered around the waters of Somalia. After reminding himself of the grim history involving pirates, Zhang Heng did not continue staying in the cabin. Judging by the direction of where the cannonball was from, he deduced he was still in the heat of a battle. Right now, the first thing he had to do was to leave this place. Who knew a second cannonball might come crashing down on him, and he wouldn't be so lucky this time. Zhang Heng quickly opened the door, only to bump into a sailor that was holding a box of ammunition. The Navy sailor was still relatively young, looking to be in his teens. Fear and anxiety were written all over his face. Immediately, he got up and ran to the deck with the box in hand, not saying a single word to Zhang Heng as he sprinted along. Then there was a whistle from afar. Another cannonball had been launched, landing right on the sailor's chest. Zhang Heng quickly ran over to check on him. Unfortunately, his lungs had collapsed. There was no way he would survive his severe injuries. Before he took in his last breath, he held on to Zhang Heng's hand, eyes filled with a strong reluctance to leave this world. After going through the war in Finland, Zhang Heng knew precisely how to deal with a situation like this. All he could do right now was repeatedly tell the man that he was going to be fine. Half a minute later, the young Navy sailor passed away, his eyes still wide open. Zhang Heng used his hand and closed them gently, then quickly ran to the deck with a box of ammunition. He needed to know what was going on right now. Right at that moment, a man from the upper deck looked down and saw Zhang Heng. The man was around 40 to 50 years old. His skin appeared tanned, and he seemed to have spent many years out at sea. I have told you guys repeatedly not to leave your cabins. This ship doesn't have enough firepower. It's impossible for us to assign personnel to protect each and every one of you, yelled the middle-aged man who appeared furious. Zhang Heng was relieved when he heard the man speaking English. He was worried that he might be on a Spanish or Portuguese vessel, and in times like these, things could get messy if he couldn't communicate with them. Turning around, he showed the middle-aged man the box of ammunition he had. The dead boy's body was not too far away from him. "Your man was hit by a cannonball. I'm here to help." The old sailor was surprised by Zhang Heng's actions. However, this was not the right time for a chat. Ammunition was running out fast. "Quick, hand me the box." Immediately, Zhang Heng climbed to the upper deck. It was then that he saw how bad the situation was. The entire place had been severely damaged by enemy fire, and bodies were strewn all around as well. He looked to his left and saw the mast of the enemy ship. Right at its top flew the flag of the Black Sail. Chapter 97, Black Sail II. Sporting a tricorn above of his head, the plump man should be the captain of the ship. He stood on the bridge, observing the enemies with a pair of bronze binoculars. Knowing that his ship was on the losing side, he could not help but feel nervous. "Father, I think we should surrender. Our ship simply can't go as fast as them. We don't even have a third of their cannons, and we have only 15 guns on board. There's no way we can win this fight. We should surrender while we," muttered the young man that stood beside the captain. The captain then glared at his son and shouted at the sailor behind him. "Where is the ammunition? I need it right now." "We are awaiting your orders, Captain," replied one of the old sailors. "Cannoneers, light your fuses." The moment he gave the order, the enemy opened fire, and a cannonball landed directly on a cannon that was currently being reloaded. The heavy barrel fell off its base and crushed the two cannoneers behind it. Everyone could hear their agonizing screams. Then, the whole ship fell silent. It seemed that they did not survive. At the same time, the bark flying the Black Sail flag was coming full speed ahead. "Everyone, hang in there. All we need to do right now is to damage them. We need to wreak fear into the hearts of those bastards. Let's hope that they would give up attacking us and look for somebody weaker instead. I will reward every single man here with £6 each when we arrive in Boston later." The sailors' low morale was once again ignited with renewed flames of passion. When the enemies entered their shooting range, all 15 guns were fired at them at the same time. Zhang Heng could clearly see that the sailors lacked shooting practice. Most of their lead landed on the enemy vessel's gunwale. With an attack like that, it would surely be impossible to put fear into their enemies, let alone damage them. Instead, they were hammered with a vengeance following a more powerful retaliation. Soon, another 9 sailors were killed, and the rest of the shipmates lost their will to fight. No amount of reward money could compel them to further risk their lives in fighting off their enemies. Just as expected, every single sailor on the ship started to drop their weapons. Thus, the captain knew that the battle was lost. There was nothing he could do now except to stare at his nemesis in despair. As he turned around to check on his people, he realized that his son was lying on the deck as well. The boy was clutching his chest, frantically trying to plug a deep gash, of which blood gushed out like a swollen river. The captain then took off his tricorn, knelt on the ground, and held his dying son to his chest. At the same time, Zhang Heng quickly ran to the captain's room. The moment he spotted the bark flying the Black Sail flag, he knew they were going to lose the battle. There was nothing he could do even if he decided to join the battle right now. The ship that he was on right now was just an ordinary merchant vessel from England. In order to make sure that they could haul as much cargo as possible, the vessel was scantily equipped with 8 9-pounder light cannons. A lack of ammunition plagued them as well. As for the enemies, they had at least 30 cannons on their ship. If their goal wasn't capturing the ship and its cargo on board, they would have destroyed them a long time ago. Instead of making the pointless move of defending the ship, Zhang Heng ran to the captain's quarters the moment chaos hit the boat. Usually, this was the most heavily guarded part on a ship. Right now, there wasn't a single soul in the room. There were some valuable decorations around, but Zhang Heng did not bother taking them. He wasn't sure if he would get to keep anything when the pirates boarded them. He then saw a wooden table on his right and quickly opened all the drawers. Then he found what he was looking for. It was the ship's logbook, a compulsory record for every vessel to have. It was used to record dates, the direction of the wind, weather, and major incidents. The only thing that mattered to him right now, though, was to find out the era he was in and some basic information of this ship. Opening up the logbook, he started to read through its records. 3 minutes later, he heard a loud boom, followed by the ship violently shaking. It was so intense that it almost caused him to fall to the ground. When it had finally calmed down, he opened the curtains and took a peek outside. The first thing he saw was a giant cannon. Immediately, he shut the curtains. He knew that he did not have much time here. With both ships getting closer to each other, that would mean a close standoff between two was about to happen soon. Judging by the merchant ship's lethargic firepower, the battle would surely end faster than expected. Luckily, Zhang Heng had scanned through most of the important information recorded in the logbook. It was the year 1712. If he remembered correctly, the 1701 War of Succession in Spain had caused the entire country to fall apart. Through a series of treaties, England managed to claim several colonies that had originally belonged to the Spanish. And with that, England became the new king of the sea as time went on. At the same time, piracy saw its most active period as well. This merchant ship carrying an entire shipload of woolen goods was supposed to travel to Boston. After unloading the goods for sale, they were scheduled to ferry a shipment of tobacco back home. As bad luck would have it, they crossed paths with a band of pirates just as they were about to arrive in Boston. Knowing that they had a slim chance of escaping, the captain decided to fight and protect his ship. After all, he was an ex-Navy officer. Zhang Heng could hear the sailors screaming in agony from the captain's cabin. It seemed like the captain's plan had failed miserably. Zhang Heng soon managed to locate the location of New Providence from the map on the table. It was located in the central north of the Bahamas. Nassau, one of its small towns, was located in the north of New Providence. Zhang Heng wanted to study the map in better detail, but there was no time left. The pirates could enter the captain's room any time now. Quickly, he returned the logbook back into the drawer and left. Initially, he wanted to return to where he came from. However, he changed his mind halfway and went to the galley instead. He then took out his lucky rabbit foot, hunter's blessing, and Paris arrow and hid them under a plank. As he was leaving, he bumped into two men. One of them was running away from the other. The one running for his life crashed into Zhang Heng, and both of them fell on the ground. The person giving chase was clearly not a crew of the ship. He wielded a bloody axe and glared at the plump guy that was crying and crawling on the ground. He was ready to execute him. The moment he saw Zhang Heng, he became even more excited. Having no room for hesitation, Zhang Heng rushed toward him and disarmed the pirate with a hard sidekick. Immediately, the pirate extended his arm, and a fist landed on Zhang Heng. In that split second, he instinctively extended his arms to protect himself. The blow was so powerful that it temporarily paralyzed his arm. As for the pirate, he suffered no injuries. Seeing that he was unscathed, he grinned and drew his dagger from his waist. Zhang Heng instantly realized that he was in big trouble. Close-quarters combat was never his forte. Judging from the pirate's attack, Zhang Heng knew that it was impossible for him to defeat him from such a close distance. Chapter 98, Black Sail III. Zhang Heng was forced to retreat back to the galley. As he attempted to dodge the attack, the dagger inadvertently slashed his left arm. Though it was just a flesh wound, Zhang Heng knew that he had to do something quickly before the pirate killed him. Another 3 steps back and he would come up to a wall. As for the plump guy, he sat where he was, absolutely overcome by fear. It seemed as if he had lost his mind. In a life-and-death situation such as this, a gushing river of thoughts raced through Zhang Heng's mind. However, he soon regained his calm. After all, he had just gone through a vicious war in Finland. Right now, he had the shadow moment in his pocket, but it only had one usage left. Zhang Heng did not use it at the beginning of his quest. There was still a long journey ahead of him. Suddenly, Zhang Heng remembered the time when he went bear hunting with Simon in Sweden. He then spotted a chopping board with a small knife that was used to peel potatoes. Unfortunately, the pirate noticed Zhang Heng eyeballing the weapon. The very second Zhang Heng was about to move over to grab the knife, the pirate quickly charged at him with his dagger, causing him to move in the opposite direction where he managed to dodge the attack. Immediately, the pirate reacted and changed his course as well. He aimed his dagger directly at Zhang Heng's chest, but to his surprise, Zhang Heng managed to evade him once again. Instead of hitting its target, the dagger landed on a piece of smoked meat that hung behind him. This time, the pirate ran out of patience. An extreme frustration boiled within him as Zhang Heng avoided his attack over and over again. He had enough of it. With rage clouding his mind, he pushed aside the smoked meat in an attempt to go for Zhang Heng again. However, he was greeted with a harpoon this time. Zhang Heng had long awaited this golden opportunity. Though the both of them had only gotten on the ship recently, Zhang Heng had taken time to explore the galley and look for a good spot to hide his items. Hence, he knew the place better than the pirate. When he was forced to retreat to the galley, the thought of using the harpoon to attack the pirate already lingered in his mind. He simply needed to figure out how to lure the pirate to where the spear was. Simon once told him that a smarter way to hunt bigger prey was to make them believe that they were the hunters in this hunting game. When the time was right, Zhang Heng would not hesitate to use his weapon to kill his prey. In that split second, the harpoon penetrated the pirate's neck. The strike was so blindingly fast that the pirate had no time to respond to it. He was killed on the spot instantly. The bear had finally been skewered by the hunter's snare. With a grunt, Zhang Heng retrieved the harpoon. The pirate took a few steps backward as he staggered and fell. Then he stopped breathing. Zhang Heng slumped to the ground after he killed the pirate. At the same time, the plump guy who was paralyzed with fear snapped out of his stunned state by the loud noise from the galley. It was then that he found out that the situation turned out very differently than what he'd expected. "You won. You do realize that you are still sitting there asking me useless questions, right?" "The answer is yes, I killed him." The plump guy realized that he had just behaved like a coward. When Zhang Heng desperately needed his assistance, he was no better than a petrified dummy. "I'm really sorry, I was terrified just now. Earlier I wanted to open the door to see what the racket was outside, but I didn't expect some pirate to come charging at me. I thought today would be the day I die. Oh right, my name is Marvin. I'm the son of a farm owner in a colony. I'm planning to go back to help my dad in the fields. I think I met you on the ship earlier. You are the Asian traveler, right? Your name is Zhang. Marvin, I don't think this is a good time for a chat. Pirates have now overrun this ship. We will be in deep shit if they find their dead brother here." Inevitably, this had turned out far from the desired scenario. Being all alone, Zhang Heng was hardly powerful enough to turn the situation around. Initially, he only wanted to hide his stuff and prepare to surrender. He did not expect that he would encounter a pirate the moment he stepped out the door. To make matters worse, he was left with no other option but to eliminate a pirate. Leaving the pirate to kill the plump man in cold blood would only encourage the pirate to go after him in a worse way. However, killing the pirate had just stuck a giant bull's on Zhang Heng's back. Now, he was in grave danger. What should I do now? I did not kill him. I did nothing to him. I just sat there and kept still." Zhang Heng was clearly unhappy with what he just heard. He had not expected that the first thing Marvin would do was to exclude himself from the incident. Though Zhang Heng's primary intention was not to rescue him, it was still a fact that Marvin got to live to see tomorrow thanks to him. Before Zhang Heng could say anything, however, he heard the sound of footsteps from afar. Half a minute later, two men appeared in the galley. One of them clutched a gun while the other held a British cutlass. Judging from their ragged looks, they were definitely not the ship's crew. "I found another two alive. Be good, yo. Your captain is dead. Everything on this ship belongs to us now. Ain't no point playing the hero in front of us," barked one of the pirates while brandishing his weapon. Immediately, Marvin nodded his head like a madman. The extras on his body jiggled nonstop as he bobbed around nervously. Sweat dripped off his face like a leaky tap. "What the hell is going on?" asked the pirate with the cutlass. At that, he quickly made a round of the galley and found nothing suspicious. Suddenly, he spotted a giant barrel behind them. The pirates shoved Marvin away and opened the barrel. All they found was a pile of smoked fish. "Are you done yet? We are going to miss the celebration if you stay here any longer," Speaking of which, where is Victor? I saw him come this way earlier, asked the other pirate. Honestly, I don't wish to see him at all. He's a raving lunatic. Whenever we board a ship, he'll turn the whole place into his killing field for sure. If it was not for his bravery, he would have been kicked off the ship a bloody long time ago. Let's go. Time to go gather on the deck, replied the pirate while sliding his cutlass back into its sheath. As Zhang Heng and Marvin were escorted to the deck, they saw the other survivors. Amongst the group were the last 7 sailors. All of them were shell-shocked, dreading the unknown that fate would bestow upon them. Chapter 99, Black Sail IV. Both pirates walked towards Zhang Heng and Marvin and proceeded to search them from top to bottom. That included their pockets and shoes. They wanted to make sure that they would not miss out on a single valuable item. After that, Zhang Heng and Marvin were being pushed into the crowd. Marvin fell into a state of panic when he saw the dead sailors beside him. Out of fear, his body shook uncontrollably once again. At that, the pirates started laughing at him hysterically. Zhang Heng's wallet and snuff bottle were confiscated by the pirates. However, his shadow key and shadow moment were still with him. These 2 items were his trump cards to protect him from life-threatening circumstances. In order to make sure that the pirates wouldn't get to them, he had to trigger the shadow keys effect to turn both items into shadow form. His current situation right now was different from the other quests he had completed. At the moment, he was somewhere out at sea. That meant there were only so many places he could run to even if he triggered the shadow moment's effects. An option was to move his shadow on the sea, but he would surely drown once its effects expire. There was a slim chance that he would be saved by passing boats. However, getting devoured by sharks or drying out in dehydration seemed like a stronger possibility. The passengers on the ship were merely ordinary folk looking forward to a new life in the colonies that they headed to. Instead of a fresh start, they had now become prisoners of the pirates. Most of them did not behave as pathetically as Marvin, though Zhang Heng could sense that woe and despair were slowly festering amongst the crowd like a deadly virus. Then, around a minute later, loud sounds of people brawling and gunshots were heard coming from the lower deck. When the commotion died down, a man slowly strolled towards the crowd. I must apologize. Some idiots failed to do what they should have done. I needed some time to convince them. Well, the problem is solved now. Let me introduce myself. I'm the helmsman of the Sea Lion. You can call me Mr. Orf. Mr. Orf appeared to be about 40 to 50 years old. Apart from a slight bald, he looked to be in remarkably good health. Unlike all the merciless pirates, he seemed to be a more reasonable man. For that matter, the helmsman was a position that required excellent communication skills. It was the second most important position on a pirate vessel. He had to continuously maintain a good relationship with the entire crew, where, for the most part, he would act as the representative of the pirates' interests, serving as an essential link to bridge the gap between crew and captain. Through the helmsman, the crew felt like they had been given a voice to question the captain if they thought they had been mistreated. Due to that, many saw a glimmer of hope when they saw the helmsman. "Please, sir, please let us live. We are just rankless civilians. My wife and kids are still waiting for me to get home," begged one of the passengers. At that, Orf nodded his head in empathy and drew the gun from his waist. Aiming at a sailor who had given up his arms, he pulled the trigger. The lead ball penetrated the sailor's head, and he instantly collapsed. Blood splattered all over the helmsman's linen shirt. After witnessing this raw display of brutality, the prisoners were left panicked and distraught. Suddenly, they remembered that pirates would never show empathy to those they captured. These were a group of bloodthirsty monsters that would not hesitate to kill anyone they saw as unfit to live. That would mean they were capable of killing off every soul aboard this merchant vessel, just because they were pissed off by someone. The gunshot was definitely not a good omen. Marvin was so terrified that he started to pee himself. "I'm really sorry. I had to do it. This guy killed 2 of my brothers when we boarded your ship just now. I will never let a person like him off the hook. I might be old, but I don't forget. My creed in life is blood for blood. This is how we work," said an emotionless Orf while putting away his gun. Every single pirate roared into a loud cheer after he finished talking. At the same time, the captured prisoners were a little less worried. No doubt the killing was carried out so brutally, it was in one way or another acceptable if he did it out of vengeance. The passengers had forgotten, though, that the sailors were the ones who had protected them from the pirates in the first place. The remaining 6 sailors surrendered to the pirates earlier than most of the people. Now, to stay alive in this scenario, everyone chose to stay completely silent. Many thoughts ran through their minds. They were ashamed of their cowardice, but also glad that they did not participate in the fight earlier. Now that the debt is paid, it's time to talk about what matters the most to all of you. As it stands, this ship now officially belongs to us. This includes every single item on the vessel, your wallets, and all your valuables. Now, folks, we are a reasonable bunch. We will prepare a small boat for you, and you'll head back to land. Other than that, you can have 2 buckets of drinking water, some biscuits, and some smoked meat to keep you alive on your journey. Consider yourself lucky, as we are within a trade route right now. I heard the weather should be fine for the next 2 days. If the gods find favor in you, some vessel might just pass along and come to your rescue. Orf's little speech did little to extend the calm. Instead, new chaos arose. 1 small boat, 2 buckets of drinking water, some biscuits, and smoked meat were definitely not enough for 30 passengers. A brief storm would definitely blow everyone to meet their maker. The chances of them dying out at sea were exponentially higher than being rescued by some random passing ship. Some passengers even started to beg the pirates for mercy. Unfortunately, Orf had made up his mind and was not about to change his decision. I know this is a huge risk for you to take, but you have to remember that we are pirates, not philanthropists. If you want to live, figure that out yourself. Once Orf was done talking, the pirate beside him launched the small boat on the water. However, the lifeboat was literally a raft of sorts, only able to fit a maximum of 20 souls with 0 extra space for food and water. Suddenly, a muscular pirate walked towards them and made an announcement. "Are there any cooks or carpenters here? We need 2 carpenters and 1 cook. Join our ranks if you are interested in the positions." Instead of getting on the small boat, people figured they would have a better chance of surviving if they joined the pirates. "Me, I'm the ship's carpenter. I'm willing to join you," said one of the captured sailors. "It's my first time out at sea before, but I have made furniture for the people in town. Do you think I can join you guys?" asked another passenger. "Sure, for now, you will have to become his assistant first." Seeing the incident before them, the passengers fell into a cloud of jealousy. Many were professionals, and even the most ruthless of pirates would have respected them if they were given a chance to. "1 more spot left. Don't miss out on the opportunity. Anyone else willing to come with us?" "I am." To everyone's surprise, Marvin was the one who spoke up. Chapter 100, Black Sail v. "You are the cook?" asked the pirate while looking at Marvin. It was no wonder the pirate was suspicious. Marvin's attire was far from what a cook would wear. The son of a farm owner could actually be quite fashionable. The plump man had put on a wig, and his collar and sleeves had floral stitching on them as well. On top of it, he had also adorned a custom-made jacket. As for his feet, only a pair of socks could be seen, as his beautiful boots had been confiscated by the pirates earlier. My mother has a motel in Canterbury. I help up with the cooking whenever there are not enough people in the kitchen." Still, the muscular pirate was in doubt. Ash looked at the pants that Marvin just wet. Immediately, he realized that he had just screwed up the pirate's first impression of him. "I make delicious food. Sometimes the cook on this ship would even ask for my opinions and help. You can ask your friend if you don't believe me. I was in the kitchen when they found me." "That is correct," confirmed both of the pirates who had found Marvin and Zhang Heng. Marvin then turned around, grinning at the muscular pirate with sensitive and sheepish eyes. "Give it a try then, but here's a fair warning. If your food tastes bad or our stomach acts funny after we try it, the rest of my brothers will not forgive you even if I'm willing to do so," warned the muscular pirate while pointing at his fellow crew. At that, Marvin quickly thanked the pirate for taking him in. "All right, everyone, all positions have been filled. The recruitment is done. I wish you all a pleasant journey later, the muscular pirate continued. Then a voice came from his back. Hold on. Immediately, the muscular pirate halted in his steps. He did not notice that Marvin had become extremely nervous after hearing the voice. Zhang Heng ignored Marvin's signal and proceeded to speak his mind. I wish to join the crew too. It was too high a risk to get on the small boat and wait for a rescue that might never come. He would have chosen to get on it if he was the only one, though. That said, he knew that things would become complicated with that many people on the same boat. Besides, his game items were still on the ship. He would not be able to retrieve them if he left with the rest of the passengers now. I admire your passion. Like I said earlier, all we need is 3 people, and all positions have been filled, the muscular pirate shrugged. Hand me the gun, said Zhang Heng calmly. Perhaps it was Zhang Heng's confidence that had compelled him, or the encouragement from his friends to hand him the gun. Anyhow, the muscular pirate picked up the weapon and handed it to Zhang Heng, who immediately did a quick check the moment he got his hands it. After going through the war in Finland, he had become quite knowledgeable about guns. What he was holding right now was a gun with a flintlock mechanism. As compared to a matchlock, its shooting process was much more straightforward. For this gun, the user would use flint to light up the gunpowder. Featuring better range and a smaller recoil, that meant that it was more accurate overall. The gun with the flintlock mechanism was invented during the 16th century. In the 17th century, it was widely distributed amongst armies in Europe. After that, it played an essential role in the American War of Independence. However, this weapon was severely outdated for its time and could never compare to the M28 that he used during the Finnish War. Gunpowder and bullets had to be loaded separately, requiring a long time for the user to reload after ammunition had depleted. To make matters worse, it could only shoot up to 80 meters. Zhang Heng took a good minute to study the gun. Every single pirate, including the muscular one, was starting to get impatient. It was at that moment that Zhang Heng raised the weapon, and without any warning, he pointed it at Marvin. Left in a shock, Marvin thought Zhang Heng was about to kill him. Bang! The gun was fired, and the bullet whizzed by Marvin, landing on an apple that a pirate was holding at the end of the ship. At the unbelievable shot, the pirates were all awestruck by Zhang Heng's excellent marksmanship. After a while, everyone began cheering for him. Zhang Heng and the apple were more than 40 meters apart, not to mention the ship steadily bobbing up and down in the rough sea. Considering his less than ideal circumstances, it should have been almost impossible to hit any target accurately. Zhang Heng had learned how to operate the gun from Simon, and his movements were so fluid that it seemed as if he did not take any aim before firing the shot. Most of the pirates here were just ordinary people with no particular set of skills. Armed with the sole concept of the strong preying on the weak, they would always respect those who were better than them. Suddenly, one of them shouted out aloud, "Take him in, take him in." Soon after that, everyone else followed suit. The muscular pirate frowned, knowing that he couldn't disappoint everyone just like that. Fine, you are a great shooter. No one will be able to say no to you. I don't mind adding one more to our crew. Come with me. The 4 of them then followed the pirate to the lower deck. They call me Owen, leader of the pirates on the Sea Lion. I don't care what you have done before or where you come from. You are now part of the Sea Lion. Of course, we can't trust all of you yet, but it's okay. Time will tell. There are some things you need to know before you come aboard. There will be no gambling, no stealing, and no random brawls. That is unless you have somebody to witness your fight. And most importantly, fleeing a battle is punishable by death. Owen paused for a moment and took a look at Marvin, who wiped away his sweat as he tried to crack a smile. We plunder other vessels. Keeping any loot you found is a big no-no. Unless you have personally killed an enemy, you will get to choose one item from your kill. Otherwise, everything we rob will be pooled up and distributed equally to everyone aboard. The captain and our helmsman will get double the loot. After that, the doctor, carpenter, cannoneer, and pirate leader will get 1.5 times the booty a regular crewman gets. Those who perform well during battles will be rewarded afterward. And if you are injured during a battle, You will also receive a certain amount of compensation. The amount you get will depend on how long you have been on the ship. Oh, one more important thing. Every single matter on this ship, including the appointment and removal of the captain and helmsman, is to be decided by everyone. Everyone on this ship has the right to say something and vote. That'll be all for now. Any questions? Owen asked as he looked around. I have a question. I'm not trying to avoid responsibility, but does the cook need to join battles as well? Typically, no. However, if things do go south, every crewman has to pick up a weapon and defend the ship. Speaking of which, I need you to look for Dufresne later. He will hand you a gun. I will inform him about your talents, said the pirate to Zhang Heng. The rest of you, you all can go and get your weapons from Dufresne as well. Consider this our welcoming gift. In the future, you will have to pay up if you damage the weapon. We will deduct its cost from your loot during our next raid.